In 13th century England, a man was sentenced to be hanged for stealing a rabbit, a punishment that left him waiting 7 days on the gallows before anyone appeared to carry out his sentence. The air smelled of dry hay and rotted leaves as the sun dipped below the horizon. The creaking wood beneath your feet echoed in the empty courtyard, each step colder than the last. What if rabbits were worth more back then? What if that man was innocent? Could 7 days on a gallows truly be seen as justice? If you're listening to this to fall asleep, that's exactly why I make these. Drop a comment and tell me where you are and what time it is. I read every single one. The moon began its slow climb through the night sky, casting a pale light over the silent stone walls of the medieval town. The warm, muggy air clings to your skin like a wet cloth, heavy and thick, with the scent of freshly cut hay and earthy loam from the nearby fields. You can feel the sweat starting to trickle down the small of your back as you push open the door to the blacksmith's forge at the edge of town. The sound of hammer on anvil is immediate, a sharp, rhythmic clatter that pierces through the morning haze. Inside, the air is even hotter than outside, thick with the scent of metal and smoke from the fire burning in a pit deep within the forge. Your hands immediately seek out the coolness of the stone wall as you step inside, fingers brushing against the rough surface before they slide into your pockets. A pair of leather gloves lies on one of the workbenches, invitingly familiar despite their worn state. The blacksmith's name is Rollo, a burly man with thick, calloused hands and an even thicker beard that seems to have grown over his years spent shaping steel. He looks up from his task, forging what appears to be some kind of strange implement, and gives you a nod before returning to his work. You clear your throat softly as you approach the bench where he's at, feeling a bit self-conscious about why you're here today. Rollo glances over but doesn't say anything more. Instead, he continues with his hammering, the rhythmic sound growing louder in your ears until it drowns out any other noise. After what feels like an eternity of silence, perhaps only 3 or 4 minutes, the blacksmith finally puts down his hammer and turns to face you. His eyes narrow slightly as they scan over you before he speaks, voice deep and gravelly with the years of smoke and metal fumes in his lungs. "All right, what do you want from me today?" Rollo's question is direct, but not unfriendly. It carries a hint of impatience that might stem from the heat or perhaps just his general disposition. You take a moment to gather your thoughts before answering him. "I came about something peculiar," you say softly, trying to keep your voice steady despite the warmth surrounding you. "You know how blacksmiths make horseshoes and tools for farmers. Well, there's this strange business in the town square today where I heard they're hiring someone who knows how to make bedpans." Rollo raises an eyebrow at that, his expression shifting from suspicion to curiosity as he leans forward slightly. "Bedpans," he repeats slowly, testing out the sound of it on his tongue before nodding thoughtfully. There's a bit of business going in that direction indeed." His tone suggests he doesn't find this particularly odd, but also isn't prepared to dismiss you outright. "And why exactly are they looking for someone with your expertise?" he asks after a moment, still watching you closely as if trying to gauge the seriousness of your request. You can feel his gaze weighing down on you, making it hard not to fidget under its intensity. I heard that there's this old law in our town, something about bedpan manufacturers being essential for public health, you explain, remembering the details vividly now that they're needed. It was passed back during the time of King Henry IV, I think. The law requires every household to have a properly made bedpan at all times. Rollo chuckles low in his chest, shaking his head as he does so. Ah, yes, the laws of old kings and their silly ideas. His laughter is warm but carries a note of skepticism that you can't quite ignore. You see, Rollo continues after a moment, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand before resuming work on what seems to be a pair of tongs. Back then, people believed in all sorts of nonsense regarding hygiene and health. A bedpan might have seemed like some kind of magical solution for keeping folks healthy. He pauses again, looking up at you through heavy-lidded eyes. Nowadays, not so much. His tone is matter-of-fact, but tinged with a hint of amusement. You nod along, feeling a bit deflated by his response. It's clear he doesn't see the value in such an outdated law anymore either. But just as you're about to give up hope and leave, Rollo speaks again, this time more seriously. Still, he says slowly, picking up another piece of metal with tongs before shaping it into a rough form on his anvil. If there's any chance I can help out in town, then maybe this old law does have some merit after all. What if we could make sure every household has their own properly made bedpan? Proper tools for the job might just prevent more sickness than they cause. Your interest piqued by his words, you find yourself nodding along as he continues shaping the metal before him. And besides, Rollo adds with a small smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes, there's something oddly satisfying about making something so mundane, yet essential. Bedpans might not be everyone's favorite task, but they sure do serve their purpose. The thought of actually manufacturing bedpans for your town feels strange, and perhaps even a bit odd to you at first. But as Rollo continues working on the tongs and explaining different techniques involved in making them, you find yourself drawn into his world. The rhythmic sound of hammer on anvil becomes more soothing than intrusive. Each strike seems to carry with it not just metal, but also the promise of order amidst chaos. As time passes, Rollo's hands move with practiced ease as he forges tools and shapes metal, occasionally pausing to explain how certain techniques work or offer advice. You watch intently from over his shoulder, listening carefully to every word he says about proper care in handling metals and shaping them into functional objects. By the end of your visit, you feel a newfound respect for someone like Rollo, who can transform raw materials into something so essential, yet often overlooked, like bedpans. Though the task itself may be mundane, there's an undeniable satisfaction in knowing that these tools will help keep people healthier and more comfortable during their sleep. As morning wanes and the day begins to cool slightly, you gather your thoughts once again before stepping out of the forge into the still warm but less oppressive air outside. The smell of hay from earlier now mingles with the fresh scent of dewy grass, signs that another long day is coming to an end. But for now, amidst the lingering warmth and echoes of hammer strikes fading in your mind, you carry forward a small seed of curiosity about this peculiar medieval law and how it might still hold some relevance even today. As you lay there, your mind begins to drift back through time, weaving a tapestry of curiosities and conjectures about this peculiar medieval law that still held an eerie relevance today. The sun is setting on a day that feels both ancient and oddly modern. It casts long shadows across the cobblestone streets, making each stone seem as if it might whisper tales from centuries past. You wonder how such arcane laws could have survived through generations of change, adapting to new contexts while retaining their core essence. Perhaps in this age of rapid technological advancement and social upheaval, these medieval statutes offer a stark reminder that some human behaviors and societal norms endure far longer than we can imagine. Your thoughts are interrupted by the soft creaking of leather as you sit up slightly on your pallet. The light from outside is fading quickly now. It's time to return to the work that has become both a challenge and an opportunity in this strange new world where past and present coexist uneasily. As you gather yourself, preparing for another day's labor, you find a small notebook tucked beneath one of your pillows. It's weathered from frequent use, but still bears ink marks where you've scribbled down notes on the peculiar laws you have encountered so far. Today was different. Something about this particular law felt more than just curious. It resonated with an urgency that made it almost palpable. You leaf through its pages, each entry a reminder of the strange, yet strangely familiar world you inhabit. One law in particular stands out, the Bedpan manufacturer's oath. It states that any individual who manufactures bedpans for the sick and infirm must swear an oath before taking up their trade. The oath includes pledges to uphold ethical standards, ensure hygiene practices are met at all times, and maintain respect towards those they serve. It's a strange concept in this modern context, where such basic necessities often don't require oaths or formal commitments from manufacturers. Yet here it is, a law that still holds weight despite centuries of societal evolution. You can almost hear the echo of ancient voices declaring their expectations for these essential workers, ensuring dignity and care even as they toiled behind closed doors. As you ponder this, a figure approaches your room, an elderly woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile on her face. She introduces herself as Eliza, a historian from a local university who has been studying the impact of medieval laws in modern society. Her presence is unexpected, yet welcomed. There's something comforting about knowing that someone else shares your interest. Eliza pulls out a small leather-bound book, similar to yours, and begins flipping through its pages, her eyes widening as she reads aloud some of the entries. This one, she says, pointing at an entry on sanitation laws for public restrooms, is particularly interesting because it touches directly upon issues we face today, issues like privacy, cleanliness, and dignity in healthcare settings. She pauses to look at you thoughtfully before continuing. The bedpan manufacturer's oath is a fascinating example of how medieval ethics can inform our current discussions about professionalism. Even as we've moved away from the specific practices described here, there are underlying principles that remain relevant. Her words resonate deeply within you, stirring thoughts and questions that challenge your perception of both history and present-day norms. You find yourself nodding along, absorbing her insights while simultaneously feeling a sense of responsibility, that perhaps understanding these laws isn't just about curiosity, but could be crucial in shaping more compassionate and ethical practices today. Eliza hands the book back to you as the sun dips below the horizon, casting everything into shadow. Let's continue this conversation tomorrow, she suggests gently, her voice filled with encouragement rather than pressure. And so begins another day in your unlikely career, intertwining history with modernity, ethics with practical application, all under a sky that seems both ancient and endlessly promising. As you close the book and lay it beside yourself on the pallet, the weight of these thoughts pressing down gently yet firmly, you realize that perhaps there is more to this medieval lore than meets the eye. There's an underlying lesson about respect for human dignity in even the most mundane professions, an idea far too relevant today to be left behind. With a deep breath and renewed determination, you prepare yourself for sleep, knowing full well that tomorrow will bring another day filled with strange encounters, curious laws, and endless questions waiting to be explored. With a deep breath and renewed determination, you prepare yourself for sleep, knowing full well that tomorrow will bring another day filled with strange encounters, curious laws, and endless questions waiting to be explored. The sound of distant laughter mingles with the soft hum of crickets in your bedroom window, its glass cool against your fingertips as you trace it gently. The candle flickers on your bedside table, casting a gentle glow that dances across the walls, making them seem almost alive. A small leather-bound book lies open beside the flame, its pages filled with strange tales and lores, waiting to be read once more. You pull back the heavy velvet curtains from your bed, their deep burgundy fabric soft against your palms as you smooth it down. The air inside is cool and slightly musty, mingling with the faint scent of old books and spiced honey that has been left out for too long on a nearby table. A small cat purrs quietly in its basket by the window, her fur warm to touch as she nuzzles against your hand. You lay down carefully, the softness of the feather bed enveloping you like an old friend. The weight of your thoughts is heavy upon your mind. How could such strange laws have ever existed? How did people abide by them without revolt? A small wooden bookend slides off the edge of a chest nearby and thuds softly onto the floor, its surface cold against your bare foot as it rolls away. What if this were all a dream, a waking nightmare where every law was written in chalk on the streets, or where town criers became accidental spies? You shiver slightly, not from the chill, but from the idea. The weight of such absurdity is almost too much to bear, yet here you are, nestled within its strange embrace. The book shifts gently as your hand reaches for it, pages thick and yellowed with age. As you flip through them, each law seems more bizarre than the last. You read about how in certain towns, the town crier was required to deliver not just news, but also secret messages hidden inside proverbs or riddles, meant only for those who could solve them. This practice was designed to keep vital information from prying eyes and ensure that only the most trusted individuals received important communications. You smile faintly at this thought, imagining a world where every word spoken by a town crier held multiple layers of meaning, some public, others hidden like buried treasure waiting to be discovered. What if these proverbs were so complex that even the wisest among you struggled to understand them? Would you feel foolish for not grasping their significance? The candlelight casts shadows across your room, making each line on a page seem almost alive with possibility. The paper feels rough under your fingertips as you trace the edges of paragraphs, lines curving and twisting in ways that make your eyes strain just a little bit more to follow them. What if these laws were not meant to be understood, but rather experienced? What if they served as a form of entertainment or challenge for those who lived through them? The weight of such an idea is almost too much to bear. Would you have laughed at the absurdity of it all, or would you have felt some small measure of pride in your ability to decipher these hidden messages? The cat stirs beside you, her whiskers brushing against your cheek as she curls closer for warmth. The sound of her purring is soothing, a gentle reminder that amidst all this strangeness, there were still constants, like the comfort of a familiar friend. You close the book gently and place it back on its stand, the leather binding making a soft click as you do so. The air in your room seems to hold an almost tangible weight now, thick with the memories of strange laws and curious tales. The candle continues to flicker quietly beside you, casting light that dances along the edges of darkness. The floor creaks softly under your feet as you shift position, your body sinking deeper into the softness of the bed. Outside, the night grows still, a silence broken only by distant sounds, a passing dog barking in the distance or an owl hooting somewhere far off. The world outside is quiet and vast, yet within this small room, strange things lurk, laws that were both binding and freeing, hidden messages waiting to be uncovered. As you drift into sleep, your mind begins to wander, carrying with it the weight of these tales and laws. What if tomorrow brought new discoveries? What if every day was filled with more strangeness than yesterday's revelations could contain? In this quiet room, surrounded by shadows and the comforting weight of an old book, you close your eyes and let yourself be drawn into dreams that promise to uncover even stranger truths waiting just beyond the reach of waking life. In your dreams, you find yourself in a bustling medieval town square, the air thick with the smell of fresh bread and old parchment. The sun hangs low on the horizon, casting elongated shadows that dance across cobblestone streets lined with stone houses and wooden signs advertising alehouses and blacksmiths. You feel an inexplicable pull towards the center of the square, where a large stone pulpit stands under a banner adorned with intricate tapestries depicting scenes from old sagas. The town crier, an older man with a deep voice and piercing eyes, begins to speak as he ascends the steps leading up to his pulpit. His weathered hands grip the wooden platform tightly, as if bracing for some impending danger. "By the grace of our Lord King," he intones in a clear yet somehow hushed tone, "let it be known that from this day forth, any man who dares to speak ill of the local council shall have their tongue removed and replaced with a leather thong." Your heart races as you realize the gravity of what is unfolding. The town crier continues, his voice gaining strength. "Furthermore," he declares, raising his hand for silence, "should anyone choose to aid in such slander by sharing whispers or spreading false information, they shall be banished from our fair city with no chance of return, save only through the mercy of the king himself." The crowd around you murmurs, some nodding their heads solemnly while others exchange uneasy glances. You feel a chill run down your spine as the town crier's words sink in. This is not just another law, it's a decree meant to silence dissent and ensure absolute obedience. Suddenly, the man beside you leans close, his voice barely audible above the murmuring crowd. "Have you heard of this? It was only last year when the blacksmith's son accused the mayor of taking bribes. They say he disappeared without a trace after that. Your eyes widen as realization dawns. These laws are not just strange, they are terrifyingly effective in maintaining control over their citizens. You realize now why the town crier is speaking so quietly, his words barely cutting through the din around him. As you listen, your thoughts drift to the old book beside you, a collection of tales and legends from times long past. The stories within hint at a world more complex than what lies before you in this dream. You recall one particular tale about a clever peasant who outwitted a greedy lord by sending false messages through a series of unwitting couriers, turning the tables on his oppressor. With renewed determination, you approach the town crier, your voice steady and clear. "Sir," you say respectfully yet firmly, "I have heard tales of how information can be used to change fortunes. May I suggest we form an underground network? Not for spreading lies or harming others, but as a means to ensure that justice is not only served by the ruling class." The town crier pauses, his eyes narrowing slightly in thought before he nods slowly. "You speak wisely," he agrees. "If such a network could be formed without breaking the king's laws, though I fear it may come close at times, then perhaps we can find ways to protect our fellow townsfolk from those who would abuse their power." Together, you and the town crier begin sketching out this secret plan under the watchful gaze of the gathered crowd. As night falls and the stars appear in the sky above, both of you feel a sense of hope that perhaps, just maybe, there is still room for resistance in the strangest medieval laws. In your waking hours, these dreams seem increasingly real, their implications echoing through the quiet halls where you study such ancient texts. You find yourself pondering not only what happened in this dream, but also how similar structures might have existed, or could exist, today, hidden beneath layers of modern law and governance. The first thing you notice upon waking from your dream is a faint scent of wet earth and decaying leaves, carried on the cool morning breeze through an open window. The sound of distant church bells chimes softly in your ears, mingling with the quiet rustle of cloth as you slowly sit up from your bed. A heavy wooden chest at your bedside creaks ever so slightly under its own weight. Its lid is tightly sealed, a reminder of the countless secrets it holds within. You stretch, feeling each muscle wake, and respond to your movements. The leather-bound book in front of you feels strangely comforting. Its pages are thick with age, but still hold together surprisingly well, despite being several centuries old. You pick up the book by its edge, running your fingers over the rough texture of the cover as if tracing an old friend's face. The pages within are filled with laws and decrees from a time long past, laws that seem almost whimsical yet strangely familiar in their minutiae. One chapter stands out to you: 3 things nobody teaches you about peasant hygiene. Your curiosity is piqued, but as always, the real intrigue lies not just in what these laws say, but in how they might apply today. You open the book and begin reading aloud, your voice soft yet steady. The text describes a world where cleanliness was both an art and a struggle. In this medieval society, peasants were expected to maintain their personal hygiene with limited resources and knowledge. Here are 3 things you may not have known about peasant hygiene in those days. The first thing nobody teaches you is that waste management was as much of a daily concern for the peasantry as it is today. Latrines were common, but far from plentiful, often little more than holes dug into the ground near communal areas or along riversides where they could be easily accessed, yet also quickly concealed by the natural environment. Waste would pile up over time, and the smell was not a pleasant one to encounter in such close quarters. Imagine this: you wake before dawn, your eyes still adjusted from sleep, and you step outside into the chill of an autumn morning. The air is crisp and carries with it the faint scent of wood smoke from nearby hearths. The ground beneath your feet feels cool and damp. Last night's rain has left its mark on everything. As you walk to find a place for your own latrine, you notice that many others are already at work. Men and women alike relieve themselves in small groups, trying to avoid the worst of the stench, but unable to escape it entirely. The next thing nobody teaches is about water management. Clean drinking water was scarce and precious, often sourced from wells or streams several miles away. The peasants were instructed not only on how to fetch this vital resource, but also on where exactly they should dispose of their waste so as not to contaminate these sources. One common practice was to use small pits for urination that could later be covered with soil, while feces and other solid wastes might find temporary refuge in nearby ditches or fields. You imagine yourself setting out early one morning, carrying a pail filled with chamber pot contents from the night before. The weight of the bucket is significant but manageable as you walk through the village streets, each step echoing slightly on the cobblestones below. You approach your designated pit and begin to empty your burden into it, taking care not to disturb any neighbors who may be nearby washing or doing their own morning duties. The final thing nobody teaches about peasant hygiene might surprise many. Hand-washing was a far more common practice than you would think. Before meals, before handling newborns, even after defecation, peasants were expected to clean themselves thoroughly using whatever means possible. They used water from nearby sources or, if necessary, wet cloths dipped in urine, which had natural antibacterial properties, as an alternative. Consider this: as the day progresses and you find yourself seated at your daily table for lunch with family members gathered around, you take a moment to wash your hands. The process is meticulous yet practical, using a bowl of water that has been heated over an open fire, carefully wringing out a cloth and wiping down each finger before placing it into the communal basin again. This ritual serves not only as a hygienic measure, but also as a sign of respect for those you share meals with. These laws may seem quaint or even absurd by modern standards, imposing strict rules on where to defecate, how to wash one's hands, and what water sources are considered pure enough, but they were deeply ingrained in the daily lives of medieval peasants. Each task required attention to detail and a sense of community responsibility that we often take for granted today. As you close the book with a soft thud, your mind wanders back to those early morning moments described within its pages. You realize how much has changed since then: our understanding of sanitation, our access to clean water, even our expectations around personal hygiene have evolved in ways both profound and subtle. Yet, amidst all this progress, there remains something familiar about the struggles faced by those long-ago peasants. You ponder not only what happened in that dream, but also how similar structures might exist, or could still exist, beneath layers of modern law and governance, quietly influencing our daily lives without us fully realizing it. The weight of history presses down upon you as you reflect on these seemingly trivial, yet critical aspects of human existence across centuries. The morning sun begins to rise higher in the sky, casting long shadows through your window. You gather up the book once more, feeling its familiar shape and texture between your fingers before placing it carefully back onto the chest where it belongs. With a final glance around your room, now bathed in golden light, the weight of these historical insights seems almost manageable as you prepare to face another day filled with new challenges and opportunities. As you step out into the morning light, a sense of anticipation stirs within you as you prepare to delve further into the peculiarities of medieval peasant life and their laws. The sun casts its warm rays through your window, illuminating the neatly arranged pages before you, each holding tales of forgotten customs and bygone regulations. The first thing that catches your eye is an ancient statute concerning sanitation in rural areas. It decrees that every farmer must maintain a designated pit outside his dwelling for human waste. The contents were to be periodically inspected, and if found lacking, perhaps due to excessive use or improper care, the offending peasant faced severe fines or even imprisonment. You flip through the pages, pausing at one particularly vivid passage describing how, in some regions, peasants could not defecate within sight of any noble's residence during daylight hours. Violations were met with immediate punishment and a hefty fine. The rationale behind this law was to preserve the dignity and privacy of nobility while simultaneously promoting cleanliness. Next is an intriguing piece about marriage customs. It outlines that in many parts of medieval Europe, it was illegal for peasants to marry without their parents' consent until they reached a certain age, typically 21 years old for men and 18 for women. Interestingly, the law also stipulated that if either party wished to annul the union before reaching this age limit, they had to provide compelling reasons, often involving physical or psychological abuse. As you move on, your eyes fall upon a strange regulation regarding livestock hygiene. In some areas, peasants were required to clean their pigsties every other day and ensure there was no overflowing waste. Failure to do so would result in the confiscation of pigs until the issue was resolved. The reasoning behind this law was multifaceted. It aimed not only at maintaining cleanliness, but also preventing disease spread among both humans and animals. Another curious statute deals with personal hygiene practices that were considered essential, yet went largely untaught. Peasants were forbidden from bathing in public wells or rivers without prior permission, fearing the disturbance of water supplies and potential contamination risks. Additionally, they could face penalties for shaving their heads too short, as this was seen as disrespectful to divine providence. You find yourself engrossed by these peculiar laws, each one revealing a unique insight into daily life during medieval times. The narrative continues, uncovering more surprising details about everyday practices and the often overlooked regulations that govern them. As you read on, the weight of historical knowledge begins to feel less daunting, transformed instead into a fascinating exploration of human nature and societal norms. Your fingers trace over the worn edges of the parchment, each word adding layers of understanding to the complex tapestry of life during those times. The morning light bathes your room in golden hues, casting long shadows that seem almost alive under its gaze. You can feel the weight of these historical insights settling into you, like a new garment waiting to be worn. With renewed vigor, you decide to delve further into this fascinating topic, eager to uncover more peculiarities hidden within the annals of history. The day stretches before you, filled with an abundance of challenges and opportunities, each one promising its own unique lesson about the past that continues to shape our understanding of today's world. The weight of a leather-bound book presses into your palm, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. The scent of aged parchment is pungent in the cool morning air as you step out onto the cobblestone street. Shadows stretch long across the ground from the thin slivers of sunlight peeking through the narrow windows above. You can hear the distant clinking of horseshoes on stone, a reminder that even now, the day's work has already begun. You are not alone. Several townsfolk shuffle by, their faces etched with fatigue and the weight of another long night spent in service to this quaint medieval village. The air is thick with the smell of morning firewood and something else. Perhaps it's the remnants of last night's feast lingering, or a hint at the stew cooking somewhere nearby. As you walk towards your destination, the book clutched tightly as if it might offer shelter against the day's inevitable challenges, you can't help but wonder how this strange law came to be. What secrets does it hold? The leather creaks softly under your grip, a reminder of its ancient purpose and the countless hands that have held it before. The stone walls of the village seem alive with history, each crevice telling stories of bygone eras. You reach for the iron knocker on the door, feeling its cool hardness against your fingers as you press it gently. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of old books and dampness, a room that has been untouched since long before your time. The floor creaks softly underfoot as you step inside. A fire crackles in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the walls, adorned with faded tapestries and ancient documents. The air is musty but warm, a comforting contrast to the brisk morning outside. You set down the book on the small table by the window, letting it rest for just a moment. You take a seat beside the fire, feeling its gentle warmth seep into your skin as you pull up your cloak tighter around yourself. The air here is heavy with anticipation, and you can almost feel the weight of history pressing in from all sides. What if this lore was not merely a curiosity, but held within it answers to questions that have plagued scholars for centuries? The book opens easily on its own accord, as if sensing your intent. You flip through the pages slowly, each one revealing more about the strange laws of medieval times. The first few are mundane enough: laws about sanitation and hygiene, trade regulations, rules concerning the use of public wells. But as you turn to a later section, your heart skips a beat. There it is, the night the record keepers were silenced. Your fingers trace the inked words, feeling the dry texture beneath them. The law itself states that on a certain night each year, all records must be destroyed without exception. It's a bizarre command, one that defies logic and reason. What could have led to such an absurd decree? The room feels suddenly colder as you ponder this, the fire struggling to maintain its warmth against your rising unease. You flip back through the pages, looking for any hint of context or explanation. But there is nothing. Just a blank page, followed by another, and then nothing but the final entry: all records must be destroyed. The date at the bottom is clear, though the ink has faded with time. As you read on, your mind races to fill in the blanks. What if this night was not just about erasing history, but preserving it? What if these very records were meant to remain hidden until a certain day, when their true purpose would be revealed? You take another deep breath, trying to calm yourself as the weight of what you've read settles into your bones. The room feels larger now, more oppressive with each passing moment. The fire crackles softly, drawing you back from your thoughts. Outside, the sun has begun its ascent, casting a golden glow through the windows and illuminating the room in a way that makes everything seem both brighter and dimmer at once. You look up as a small bird lands on the sill outside, chirping softly before flying away into the morning sky. The weight of your book is heavy now, pressing down with all its secrets. What if the date on this stone was correct? Would you be willing to risk everything, your comfort, your safety, even your life, to uncover what lies hidden behind those cryptic words? You take one final look at the pages, feeling their age and knowing that whatever truth they hold is something worth pursuing. As you stand up, ready to face the day ahead, a small part of you hopes that this strange lore might just be more than it seems. The door creaks softly as you leave the room, the warmth of the fire lingering on your skin long after you've stepped outside into the morning chill. The world around you feels both familiar and foreign, each step echoing through the empty streets as if to remind you that every day is a new chapter in this strange tale. The weight of history presses down once more, but with it comes an unspoken promise. There are answers waiting for those brave enough to seek them out. Amidst the whispering shadows that clung to the walls of Old Mill Street, a shadow detached itself from the darkness. A figure draped in tattered robes and cloaked under an old hat stepped out into the night air, his presence barely noticed by the few remaining souls who lingered on their nocturnal quests. The streets were eerily quiet, save for the occasional creak of cobblestones beneath worn boots or the distant hoot of a stray owl. The man moved with purpose, weaving between ancient stone buildings that seemed to hold secrets within their crumbling facades. He passed by the site where once stood the grandiose records chamber, now reduced to mere rubble and whispers of forgotten stories. A chill wind swept through the narrow alleyways, carrying tales of times long past. At last he reached a hidden entrance, a door so well camouflaged that it blended into the wall, its surface seamless with the surrounding stones. He touched his hat, and with a soft click, the door creaked open. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old parchment and dust. Lanterns flickered weakly along the walls, casting dancing shadows on ancient books and scrolls. The man moved through the dim corridors until he came to a large oak table cluttered with papers, quills, and inkwells. He sat down and began sorting through the documents, each one revealing pieces of a puzzle that stretched back centuries. His fingers traced over letters in elegant script, some barely legible due to age. As he delved deeper into the records, an old leather-bound book caught his eye. Its cover was embossed with symbols that seemed to shift and change as light fell upon them, hinting at hidden meanings within its pages. With trembling hands, he opened it, revealing a series of laws so bizarre they defied explanation. "Who would have thought," the man whispered aloud, "that such strangeness existed in our world?" He flipped through the book to find that each law was accompanied by dates and names, names of those who had dared challenge them or enforce them. It struck him then how these records were more than just laws. They were a testament to human ingenuity, folly, and sometimes sheer lunacy. One such law dictated that every time someone sneezed in the town square, all residents must immediately shout, "God bless you," 3 times. Another mandated that anyone caught wearing mismatched socks could be forced to dance for an hour by their peers as a public spectacle. Yet another stated that if a cat crossed your path while walking eastward on Wednesday, it was considered good luck. But should the same cat cross while moving westward at any time, it brought misfortune. The man's heart raced as he read further into the book. He found laws about curfews for ghosts, who were required to leave by sundown or face fines, bans on talking in tongues unless one was a witch, and even decrees that dictated how many fish could be caught with a single dip of the line. Regulations so absurd they seemed more like jests than serious edicts. As he continued his perusal, a sense of unease crept over him. These laws were not just whimsical, some held grim implications. One law required all convicted criminals to wear iron collars that weighed them down for life, ensuring their punishment was permanent and constant. Another stipulated that every person must attend 3 church services each week or face excommunication, practically guaranteeing a community's conformity. The more he read, the clearer it became. These were not just whimsical tales of medieval peculiarities, but records of a society grappling with concepts of justice, morality, and control in ways that echoed through time. The man felt an overwhelming urge to share this knowledge, to warn others about the dangers lurking behind such rigid enforcement. Just as he was about to leave, he noticed something odd, a small note tucked discreetly under one of the books. Curious, he picked it up, finding a single line written in faded ink. "They came for us, but we never spoke." The message sent shivers down his spine, leaving him pondering who they were and what exactly they had done. With newfound resolve, the man gathered as many documents as he could carry, sealing them back into their hiding place. He knew that to share this knowledge would be risky, risks of exposure, of retribution from those who still adhered strictly to old ways. But if there was one thing these records taught him tonight, it was that sometimes, even in the darkest times, voices of truth could shine through. As he left the records chamber, a soft glow appeared at the end of his path, perhaps a lantern forgotten by someone else on their late-night journey, or perhaps an angelic sign. Either way, as he stepped into the light and began walking back to his home, it felt like the first step in unveiling truths that had long been silenced. The first thing you notice as you step back into the light after hours underground, well, not exactly under, more like behind a wall, is a strange, almost comforting warmth that seeps through your clothes and coaxes your muscles to relax. It's an odd sensation, this gentle heat from somewhere unseen, mingling with the cool stone walls around you. You can still feel the rough texture of the stones on your hands, their edges worn smooth by countless fingers over centuries. The air here is stale, but carries a faint hint of something familiar, a trace of smoke and damp earth that makes your eyes water just a little. You begin walking back towards home, each step crunching slightly underfoot as you navigate through the rubble and debris left scattered on the ground. The weight in your hands, two heavy stones from an ancient wall, is almost soothing. Their smooth surfaces are cool to the touch after being buried for so long. As you move, the stones shift ever so slightly, causing a rhythmic clinking that echoes softly around you. The sound of your own breathing fills the space, slow and steady like the heartbeat of some great stone beast slumbering beneath the earth. Each inhale brings in more of the stale air, making it harder to breathe deeply. You find yourself pausing occasionally as you clear away dust bunnies or clumps of moss that cling stubbornly to the stones. The smell is a mix of dampness and decay, with hints of something metallic from long-buried metal objects. As you walk, your mind wanders back to what you've found behind these walls. You recall the intricate carvings etched into one stone, figures in strange poses, animals that seem both familiar and otherworldly. There's a sense of wonder mixed with dread at the knowledge that this place was sealed off for so long, kept hidden from prying eyes. The stones feel like secrets waiting to be uncovered, their silent whispers almost audible as you carry them. The light filtering through is soft but steady, casting deep shadows across your path and highlighting the delicate patterns on the walls. You can see now why this place was left untouched for so long. The sheer number of layers here is staggering, each one a testament to centuries of human endeavor and neglect. The stones are not just old, they're ancient, bearing marks from fires that burned here, tools that were once sharp enough to cut through stone but have since dulled with time. You glance down at your feet as you walk, noticing the intricate carvings on another piece of stone, a crude depiction of a man holding something small in his hands. It's hard not to imagine what that scene might represent. Was it meant as some kind of warning? A plea for mercy? Something else entirely? The path ahead is uneven and winding, leading you deeper into the heart of this forgotten space. The stones here are more worn, their surfaces pitted with age and use. You find yourself running your fingers over them, feeling the texture, almost expecting to see a fingerprint or two from someone long gone. Each touch feels like reaching through time itself, connecting you to people who lived in these very walls centuries ago. As you continue, you notice that some of the stones are actually quite warm, warmer than others, as if they've absorbed heat from something just beyond your sight. This warmth is different. It's not cold and metallic, but rather comforting, almost like being embraced by a forgotten friend. It makes you pause for a moment to appreciate this unexpected comfort before resuming your journey. The walls here are lined with small niches, shelves or alcoves that once held things of importance. You wonder what might have been stored in them: books, tools, perhaps even something more personal, like mementos from loved ones long since passed away. The thought gives you a small pang, but it's quickly overshadowed by the quiet excitement of discovery. The air grows slightly cooler as you approach one particularly large stone, its surface smoother and cleaner than most around it. You can see why. It must have been used for something significant, perhaps a place to rest during long discussions or even prayers. The stones here seem almost respectful, honoring their past without judgment. As you carry your load of these ancient treasures back towards the light, you can't help but feel a mix of awe and trepidation. These walls hold stories that stretch back through time, tales of kings and commoners, battles won and lost, lives lived in shadows. And now, with each step, those tales are inching closer to the surface. The warmth from your stones seems almost palpable as you continue walking, its gentle glow lighting up dark corners and casting long shadows behind you. It's a strange feeling, knowing that beneath this familiar landscape lies an entire world of forgotten history waiting to be uncovered. And with each step, it feels like you're one small piece closer to unraveling those secrets. The path ahead is filled with more stones, their surfaces worn smooth by countless hands and feet over the years. You can almost hear the echoes of footsteps that have long since faded into silence, people who walked these halls in times past, perhaps even carrying things much like you do now. The weight of your stones feels heavier as you think about all they've seen. The air here is thick with a sense of history, heavy and unyielding. You can almost taste it on the edges of your tongue, a mix of old smoke and musty earth that makes your nostrils flare slightly. It's an odd sensation, but one that grounds you in this moment, reminding you that even as the world changes around us, there are still places where history persists. As you finally make your way back to the entrance, the warmth from your stones seems almost to grow stronger, enveloping you like a protective embrace. The light here is brighter now, filtering through cracks and gaps in the walls with an urgency that feels both familiar and strange all at once. You can hear the sounds of life outside, the creaks of wood as someone walks nearby, the distant murmur of voices raised in conversation. Your path out is lined with more stones, each one a silent witness to the passage of time. As you carry your load through these ancient doorways and into the light again, there's a sense of weight not just from the stones, but also from the knowledge that now they're no longer hidden away. With every step, those secrets are inching closer to being revealed, truths waiting to be uncovered in this world where history is still written on the walls. The warmth from your hands feels like an old friend as you carry these stones back into the light, their weight a reminder of all they've seen and held onto for so long. The path ahead stretches out before you now, filled with more questions than answers. What lies beyond? What stories will be uncovered next? As you step fully into the light and begin walking back to your home, it feels like the first step in unveiling truths that have long been silenced. Each stone carries a weight not just of stone, but also of history, a reminder of times past and what might yet come. And as you move forward, these stones feel almost alive, their silent whispers guiding you towards answers waiting to be found. The warmth from your hands is now more than just comforting. It's a connection to the past that lingers even after you've left this place behind. The air outside feels different here, carrying with it an echo of what was and promises of what will be. With each step back into the world of everyday life, these stones feel like they're part of something greater, something that transcends time itself. The path ahead is not just a physical journey, but also one through history, a slow, deliberate move towards understanding where we've come from and who we are today. And as you continue on this path back to your home, the weight in your hands feels like more than mere stones. It's a tangible link between past and present. The warmth of these ancient treasures carries with it the promise of discovery, of truths long forgotten, but now waiting to be rediscovered. As you walk through the door that leads into your world again, those secrets feel close at hand, just beyond reach. And as you sit down by the fire in your home, feeling the stones on your lap and watching them slowly cool under the warmth of the flames, it's hard not to imagine what more might yet be revealed. The path ahead is filled with questions about where this journey will take you next and what other secrets lie hidden just beneath the surface. But for now, as the weight in your hands begins to lighten once more, there's a sense of peace that comes from knowing that even after all these years, history still whispers its truths through quiet, unassuming stones. And so, with each step towards home, you carry with you not only those ancient treasures, but also a newfound appreciation for the stories they tell. The path ahead is paved with mysteries waiting to be uncovered, promises of what lies just beyond the veil of time itself. The weight of a thick book presses into your hands like an old friend, its leather binding smooth and worn. The scent of aged parchment fills your nostrils, mingling with the faintly musty air that clings to the dim room. You sit on a hard wooden chair, the cold wood against your back sending shivers down your spine as you lean forward, intrigued by the tales hidden within this volume. The book is titled Curious Laws of Medieval Europe, and it opens to Chapter 6, Deadly Ingredients in Everyday Meals. Your eyes scan over the worn pages, each line etched with a history that could have been yours. You are there, sitting on a small cot next to an open window where light gently filters through, casting long shadows across your feet. You flip past pages filled with quaint illustrations of medieval kitchens and markets, bustling with people in garb so different from today's fashion, yet eerily similar in their daily struggles. The room is silent, except for the occasional creaking of the floorboards as a mouse scurries by. Your fingers trace over the inked words, feeling the texture of each letter. What if you were to step into this world? What if, amidst your mundane day-to-day tasks, there was something lurking in every pot and pan that could turn what is ordinary into extraordinary or deadly? The air here has a certain chill, hinting at an evening approaching. The scent of burning wood from the hearth below fills the room, mingling with the faint aroma of old books. You can almost feel the warmth seeping up your legs as you wrap them closer together. In this medieval world, everything was simpler, yet somehow more complex. Daily meals were no exception. They held the potential for both sustenance and peril. You are a villager in a bustling market town, walking past stalls where women with faces weathered by time sell baskets overflowing with fresh vegetables, their voices carrying through the air. You pause to take stock of your surroundings, merchants haggling over prices, children chasing each other between rows of produce, and the distant clanging of metal as blacksmiths forge new tools. Each step you take echoes softly in the narrow cobblestone streets, a reminder that even in this bustling town, life can be quiet and contemplative. Now imagine walking into one such stall, where a woman named Eliza is arranging her wares on an old wooden table. She has been selling here for as long as anyone can remember, her family's name synonymous with fresh bread and hearty vegetables. Her hands are calloused from years of labor, but they move with practiced ease. You approach the stall out of curiosity, your eyes drawn to a particular basket filled with colorful roots and leaves that seem almost alive in their vibrant hues. Eliza looks up at you, her eyes kind yet sharp with experience. She introduces herself as if you are an old friend returning after years away. Ah, good morrow. Welcome back to the market. You nod politely, your hand brushing against the cool wood of a nearby crate as you prepare to ask about these unusual ingredients. The weight in your hands is comforting, like carrying all the world's secrets within them. Eliza smiles warmly and gestures towards the basket with her free hand. These are my latest finds from the hills beyond the town, she explains, pointing toward an area you can barely see through the mist of morning dew still clinging to the ground. They're quite rare this time of year. You lean closer to examine them more closely, your eyes tracing over each root and leaf with a mixture of fascination and unease. They are not like anything you've seen before, strange shapes and vibrant colors that seem almost too vivid for nature. What if I were to use these in my cooking? You ask softly, half expecting Eliza's answer to be as straightforward as the question itself. She smiles knowingly, her voice soft but full of wisdom. Ah, a curious soul indeed. Many would say it is foolhardy. But then again, what isn't life without some risk and reward? You ponder this as she continues speaking, her words weaving through the air like whispers from another time. These roots are said to have properties that can be both beneficial and dangerous. Eliza explains with a hint of amusement in her voice. Some believe they bring strength and vitality. Others claim they might just as easily send one's soul to the depths. You feel a shiver run down your spine, not from cold, but from the weight of these words settling into your mind like autumn leaves accumulating at your feet. The air around you seems thicker now, heavy with tales untold. Eliza points towards another basket filled with what look like small pods or seeds. These are considered among the deadliest ingredients in our meals, she says quietly, her tone a mix of caution and intrigue. They taste delightful when prepared correctly, like sweet almonds, but even the slightest misstep can prove fatal. You take this information to heart, your fingers tracing over one such seed as if it were made of glass rather than earth. The thought of something so innocuous, yet capable of ending life, so abruptly feels almost surreal. What would happen then? You ask softly, more out of curiosity than fear. Would the victim simply perish without explanation? Eliza shakes her head slowly, her expression grave. Not necessarily, she says. Often they fall ill suddenly, feverish and racked with pain, before finally succumbing to death. It's said that those who survive are forever marked by it, a warning for others. You feel a coldness settle in your chest, but also an inexplicable curiosity about the mechanics behind such deadly ingredients. How did people come to know of these things? What methods were used to determine their potency? The sound of footsteps approaching breaks your train of thought. A group of men passes by, one carrying a large sack over his shoulder, while another follows closely with a wary look on his face. Their conversation is muffled but carries through the air in snippets. Still haven't found them yet, one says. Eliza turns to you and gestures towards the approaching figures. Those are the townsfolk searching for the blacksmith's apprentice who disappeared last week, she explains quietly. He was rumored to have discovered a new method of preparing these deadly seeds, but something went wrong. You feel a mix of pity and disbelief at this news. Such tragic accidents happening so casually amidst daily life seems almost incomprehensible. Eliza continues, the townspeople are livid about it. They fear the apprentice's discovery will lead to more such deaths if not properly controlled or understood. She adds, her voice tinged with a hint of frustration. You nod slowly, absorbing this information as you gaze out at the market once again. The light is beginning to change now, casting longer shadows across everything in its path. The warmth from inside begins seeping through the open window, making your skin feel pleasantly cool against it. As Eliza hands over a selection of vegetables and herbs for purchase, ones that she assures are safe, you can't help but think about how easily life's balance could shift when even simple ingredients held such power. It makes you wonder about the countless hours spent in kitchens across medieval Europe, where every ingredient added or omitted could change everything. What if these deadly seeds had been found earlier? Would history have unfolded differently? Or perhaps they were discovered too late to matter much at all. The weight of this realization presses down on your chest, making it hard to breathe. You realize that in a world so full of potential yet fraught with danger, the line between life and death was often as thin as the edge of a knife. As you leave Eliza's stall, the market town outside begins to stir more fully into activity. People are busy with their morning chores, preparing food for breakfast, tending to livestock, or simply starting another day filled with hopes and fears alike. Each person carries on regardless of what lies just beyond their own doorstep. You continue walking through the bustling streets, your steps light yet heavy with thought. The market's smells, the sweet tang of baking bread mingling with the earthy scent of fresh vegetables, fill your senses as you move deeper into town. The sun is rising higher now, casting a golden glow across everything it touches. Shadows grow longer and more defined against walls and buildings, creating stark contrasts in light and darkness. The sound of distant voices carries through the air, a mix of laughter, conversation, and occasional argument that paints a vivid picture of life, continuing despite its many challenges. You find yourself pausing at an intersection where two paths converge, each leading to different parts of town. One path seems well-traveled, worn smooth by countless footsteps over centuries. The other is less obvious, but still trodden with regularity. The air here feels lighter somehow, as if a small breeze has swept through and cleared away some of the weight that had settled on you earlier. You take in your surroundings once more, small cottages huddled together for warmth, children playing games by the side of the road, adults going about their daily tasks with grim determination. You realize then how fragile yet resilient human life can be, in a world where every meal could potentially hold secrets, both delightful and deadly. The thought lingers in your mind as you continue down one path or another, each step leading into what might have been different versions of the same journey. The weight of this knowledge remains with you even as you move forward, like carrying an invisible burden that serves as a reminder to cherish every moment, while also acknowledging the vast unknowns that surround us all. The weight of the wooden door creaks beneath your fingers as you push it open into the familiar, musty air of the old town hall. The smell of aged parchment and damp stone lingers, a testament to countless meetings that have taken place here over centuries. Your feet sink slightly with each step onto the worn wooden floorboards, their groan echoing softly against the walls. You pause for just a moment at the threshold, feeling as though you are stepping into another world, a world where decisions could alter lives in unforeseen ways. The room is dimly lit by an oil lamp hanging from the high ceiling, casting long shadows along the stone walls and dancing on the surface of the large oak table that dominates one end. The weight of your presence seems to settle here as you approach, the sound of your own breath mingling with the soft hum of old leather chairs scraping against the floor. You are there in the early afternoon, when the sun casts its golden light through a small window high above, casting an almost ethereal glow across the table. The air is thick with the scent of fresh bread and herbs that have been brought to the meeting by one of your fellow townsfolk. It's not a particularly spicy smell, but it carries a comforting familiarity, like home-baked goods on a cold morning. The wooden chair creaks as you sit down opposite the town clerk, who seems equally weary from his duties. His eyes are red-rimmed, and he rubs at them with worn hands that have seen countless meetings of this kind over many years. You can see the lines etched deeply into his face, a map of hardships endured and lessons learned. Another day, you think to yourself, another chance for something strange to happen. The weight of your thoughts settles heavily in your chest as you await what might unfold today. The clerk clears his throat with practiced ease. I have the document here from Lord Gilbert. He wishes us to convene a meeting at noon sharp tomorrow and discuss the new law he has proposed. Your eyes widen slightly, not because of surprise, but rather for the familiar dread that comes with such announcements. You can almost feel the stone walls closing in around you, as if they too understand the impending weight of this decision. Let us begin, says the clerk, his voice steady and measured. Lord Gilbert has proposed a law which states, henceforth, no person shall wear shoes in any public gathering or marketplace without permission from their lord. Silence falls over the room like a blanket, heavy with unspoken thoughts and questions. You can feel the others shifting uncomfortably in their seats, some perhaps already imagining the chaos such an edict might bring, while others are lost to the very thought. The clerk continues. He believes this will ensure greater respect among his subjects by preventing them from walking around barefoot as if they own the land. His tone is matter of fact, but there's a tinge of exasperation in it that you can almost hear. What do we think about this, my lord? Asks one of your fellow townsmen, breaking the silence. The weight of his question hangs heavily, like the shadow of an approaching storm. You hesitate for just a moment before speaking up. Well, you begin, feeling the need to voice your thoughts aloud. If everyone was barefoot all the time, surely it would make us more aware of our place in society and show humility. But what if they step on something, counters another, his voice tinged with worry. Or someone's foot could slip and cause a fall, adds yet another, eyes flickering to where you are sitting. The weight of their words seems almost tangible now as they press down upon your thoughts. The clerk leans forward slightly in his seat, hands cradling the document protectively. Lord Gilbert has also stated that any person found wearing shoes without permission will be fined 5 shillings and forced to walk barefoot for a week. Your stomach churns with unease at this news. The thought of walking around town naked for an entire week is almost too much to bear, the humiliation of it all making your skin crawl. 5 shillings, you ask aloud, more to yourself than anyone else in the room. That's a full month's wages for most of us. The clerk nods solemnly. Indeed, my lord has made that point as well. He believes such a fine will serve as both punishment and reminder. You run your fingers along the edge of one of the chairs, feeling its rough texture against your skin. The weight of this knowledge remains with you even as you move forward, like carrying an invisible burden that serves as a reminder to cherish every moment, while also acknowledging the vast unknowns that surround us all. The sound of the oil lamp flickers gently in the corner, casting shadows across the table and onto the walls. Outside, you can hear the distant sounds of children playing and merchants hawking their wares, normalcy wrapped up in a blanket of daily life. But here, inside these 4 walls, everything seems different. The weight of your thoughts presses down on you as you realize that this decision could change lives. What if someone slipped while walking barefoot? Would the fines be enough to prevent such accidents, or would they just breed resentment and rebellion? As the meeting draws to a close, the clerk stands up with practiced grace. "We will vote tomorrow at noon," he says before turning to you and nodding in acknowledgement. You stand slowly, feeling the chair scrape against the floorboards as you rise. The weight of your own decision looms large, whether or not to support this strange new law that seeks to change daily life with just one afternoon's worth of deliberation. As you step out into the corridor, the sound of children laughing carries through an open window. You breathe in deeply, feeling the crisp air on your face and letting it wash over you like a balm for all the worries and uncertainties that lie ahead. The weight of this knowledge remains with you even as you move forward, like carrying an invisible burden that serves as a reminder to cherish every moment, while also acknowledging the vast unknowns that surround us all. As you lay there, those words lingered in your mind, a reminder of how fragile and unpredictable life can be. You knew that every decision, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem at first, could alter one's path forever. It was a sobering thought, but as the sun began to rise through the windows of your room, casting long shadows on the floor, you found yourself ready to face whatever lay ahead. The clock chimed 3 times, signaling the start of another day in the bustling city of Lichfield. You dressed quickly and made your way down to the common hall for breakfast, where whispers echoed between the tables. The atmosphere was tense. Everyone seemed preoccupied with something important, though no one would share what it might be. Your attention was drawn by a young scribe who approached you, his eyes wide with concern. "Master Finn," he said quietly, "the Lord has requested your presence in his chambers immediately." You nodded and followed him through the winding corridors of the castle, each step echoing softly underfoot. The grandeur of the stone walls seemed to close around you, as if it were trying to keep out whatever was troubling Lord Alaric. Upon entering his chamber, you found several men gathered around a large wooden table strewn with parchment and quills. Lord Alaric himself sat at one end, his expression grave. He beckoned for you to approach the table, where an open scroll awaited your inspection. "Master Finn," he began, "you are familiar with our laws, yes? You have studied them extensively in preparation for your role as advisor." You nodded affirmatively, knowing well that such a statement was true. Your studies had been exhaustive. You knew every clause and condition laid down by the ancient sages who once governed this land. Then please examine this document, Lord Alaric continued, handing over the scroll with trembling fingers. It details what we are about to propose. You unfurled the parchment slowly, each word carefully scrutinized as your heart rate quickened. The document detailed a new law that would have far-reaching implications for Lichfield and its people. Every third child born in our lands must be sacrificed to the heavens, you read aloud, disbelief coloring your voice. This is outrageous. Lord Alaric sighed heavily, his eyes filled with regret. It was the only way I could think of to gain favor from the gods who have been turning their backs on us for years now. You shook your head in shock. Sacrificing children. That goes against everything we stand for, everything our ancestors fought so hard to protect. The room fell silent, save for the distant sound of a child's cry drifting through an open window. It was a harsh reminder that this decision would affect real lives, countless futures altered forever. Is there no other option? You asked urgently, searching his eyes for any hint of hope or reason. Lord Alaric's gaze met yours, heavy with the weight of a burden he could not bear to carry alone anymore. There is always another choice, he admitted quietly. But this one seemed the most practical, the least painful. You knew better than to argue further. You had seen what happened when people gave up hope and turned to dark measures in times like these. But you also understood that sometimes, even with all your knowledge, there was no escape from making decisions that would change everything. With a heavy heart, you nodded. I will support this decision, you said solemnly. But I promise you, Lord Alaric, we must find another way to restore the favor of our gods without resorting to such monstrous actions. As the day wore on, you worked tirelessly alongside your fellow advisors, drafting a new law that would appeal more directly to the hearts and minds of Lichfield's people. It was not easy. Every word had to be carefully chosen, weighed against tradition, duty, and the very soul of this land. Yet as evening approached, the final version lay before you, a document designed to bring light rather than darkness into their lives. You felt a glimmer of hope, knowing that sometimes even in the bleakest moments, there was still room for change and perhaps redemption. As night fell over Lichfield, casting long shadows across its stone streets, you found yourself reflecting on what had happened that day. One decision, one afternoon. And suddenly, nothing was the same again. The weight of this knowledge remained with you, but now it was not just a burden. It was also an opportunity, a chance to shape the future in ways no one could have imagined. And as sleep finally claimed you, those words from earlier still resonated within your mind. Carry an invisible burden that serves as a reminder to cherish every moment, while also acknowledging the vast unknowns that surround us all. The weight of your cloak settled upon you like a heavy blanket, muffling the sounds around you as if they were whispers carried by soft breezes. You wrapped it tighter around yourself, feeling the coarse wool rub against your skin in a way that was both comforting and slightly abrasive. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke from nearby hearths, mingled with the earthy scent of wet stone. Your feet moved slowly across the cobbled street, each step crunching gently underfoot, as if the stones themselves were alive. As you walked, your thoughts drifted back to that peculiar conversation earlier in the day about chivalry and its hidden costs. You had been sitting by a fire with a group of knights discussing their duties when one of them mentioned something strange. Did anyone ever tell you why they're called chivalric orders? His voice carried an echo from the stone walls, making him sound almost like he was reciting a verse. You paused, feeling your cloak pulled tighter. The light here was soft and golden, casting long shadows that danced across the paving stones as if mocking your curiosity. You had been tempted to ask more about this strange term before, but you decided against it, perhaps out of politeness or perhaps because the answer seemed too mundane for such grand titles. Now, though, a small itch in the back of your mind urged you closer to understanding. What were these orders really? And what was their hidden cost? You continued walking, the weight of your cloak now feeling more like an anchor than a comfort. The sounds around you began to blend into a soothing hum, distant laughter from nearby taverns, the creaking of wooden doors opening and closing, the occasional jingle of reins as a cart passed by. Your thoughts wandered back to the knight's words. Chivalry, he had said, is about honor and service, and yet, when you thought about it, these orders were so much more than that. They were supposed to be symbols of noble behavior, weren't they? But what if there was something else at play here? You remembered the stories your father used to tell, tales of knights who swore oaths but broke them without a second thought. Of tournaments where glory and honor seemed less important than winning at all costs. The air around you felt slightly colder now, as if the weight of these thoughts had chilled the atmosphere. You rounded a corner, and for a moment everything stopped. There was nothing but silence, save for your own breathing, slow, deep, and almost purring like a cat in contentment. You stood there for what felt like an eternity, letting this quiet wash over you before continuing on towards your destination. The street ahead opened up into the main square of the village, its center dominated by a grand stone fountain where children played with their parents' permission, or perhaps without it. Water trickled softly from a dragon's mouth at one end and gurgled gently as it flowed down through the twisting neck to form little pools that reflected the golden light. The water was cold against your fingers when you reached out, sending shivers up your arm. In this square, people bustled about their daily tasks, merchants haggling over prices, women carrying baskets filled with vegetables and breads they had just purchased from local farmers, children laughing as they chased each other around the fountain. The air was thick with the scent of fresh baked goods and roasting meats, making your stomach growl softly in response. You watched for a moment longer before turning towards the blacksmith's shop at the edge of the square. A sign hung above it, listing various items he could forge, from simple horseshoes to intricate weapons, though you couldn't help but notice that many of them were listed as chivalric orders, knights and ladies who had come seeking special pieces crafted just for their own use. As you approached the shop door, its heavy iron cladding creaked under your touch. Inside, a fire crackled warmly in the hearth, throwing light across the workbenches filled with tools of all sizes and shapes. A blacksmith stood there, his muscular form barely visible through the cloud of sparks that danced around him as he hammered away at something glowing red-hot. You walked up to him, your cloak rustling softly against the floorboards. "May I ask a question?" you said quietly, hoping not to startle him too much with sudden company. He looked over his shoulder without stopping, one hand still gripping an iron bar. His eyes were sharp and observant, framed by dark brows that seemed almost permanent in their furrowed state. "What is it?" he asked gruffly but politely enough. You hesitated for a moment before asking, "Do you ever think about the knights who commission these pieces? About what they're really paying for?" The blacksmith's head snapped up sharply at your words, and for an instant his eyes met yours. They were dark and intense, full of the kind of focus that could cut through any distraction. He paused in his work long enough to study you closely before speaking again. "Every piece I make has a story," he said finally, tapping the iron bar gently with his hammer. "Some are paid for by those who want glory on their shields and honor on their banners. Others seek something more personal, maybe a reminder of a loved one or a way to remember a battle well fought." You nodded slowly, letting this information settle in your mind. It was true. Each piece had its own narrative woven into it through the effort and skill of those who crafted them. But what about the hidden cost? You wondered silently as you took another step closer to him, feeling his gaze on you without needing to look up. "What do they not see?" you asked softly, almost afraid of your own question. The blacksmith's expression softened slightly at this, and for a moment he seemed more approachable, almost friendly despite the rough exterior he maintained. He picked up the glowing piece from its anvil and held it out to show you, the firelight casting long shadows over his face that made him look like something between a craftsman and a wizard. "Look closely," he said then, placing the hot iron in your hands. You clutched it with both palms, feeling the intense heat sear through your gloves. The metal was still too scorching to touch for long, but its weight felt heavy and purposeful in your grasp. As you held onto this piece of forged steel, memories began to surface, of knights riding out into battle, their armor gleaming under the sun, tournaments where honor seemed less important than victory at all costs. And yet, what price did these men pay? How much were they willing to sacrifice for that sense of chivalry and service? The blacksmith watched you intently, as if waiting for a response, but there wasn't one ready to come forth. Instead, your mind wandered back through the day's events, the conversation with those knights, their earnest expressions and sincere words about honor and duty. You realized then that perhaps it was not so much what they paid for these pieces of metal that mattered, though some might say gold or silver could buy anything, but rather the burden they carried within them. An invisible weight serving as a constant reminder to cherish every moment, while also acknowledging the vast unknowns that surrounded all of us. With this thought, you handed back the iron bar and stepped away from the forge. The blacksmith nodded once more before returning his attention to his work, leaving behind only faint echoes of hammering and chiseling in your ears as you made your way out into the cool evening air. And as sleep finally claimed you, those words from earlier still resonated within your mind. Carry an invisible burden that serves as a reminder to cherish every moment, while also acknowledging the vast unknowns that surround us all. As you stepped out into the cool evening air, the soft murmur of the town seemed to echo with a whispering wind. The stars were beginning their silent dance across the vast expanse of the night sky, and beneath them, the cobbled streets held stories from ages past. The gentle hum of conversation filtered through your half-closed lids as you leaned against the cool stone wall of an old house. The words carry an invisible burden that serves as a reminder to cherish every moment, while also acknowledging the vast unknowns lingered in your thoughts, a weight both heavy and light, urging you to look deeper into the world around you. You paused for a moment, considering them in the quiet of the night air before continuing on. The path ahead was well-trodden but unfamiliar. Each step carried with it echoes of ancient tales and forgotten wisdom. As you walked through the dimly lit streets, the shadows seemed to stretch out like silent hands, inviting secrets and whispers that lay hidden within the cobbled stones themselves. Reaching your destination at last, a small library tucked away in an alleyway, you pushed open the heavy wooden door with a quiet groan. Inside, the air was thick, with the scent of old paper and ink, mingling with the faint, musty odors of time itself. The shelves were lined with leather-bound volumes, their spines cracked and faded, but still holding secrets from ages past. You found yourself drawn to an ancient book at the very end of a long shelf, its cover adorned with intricate engravings that seemed to shift as you approached. With trembling fingers, you turned the pages, each one revealing more about this strange world you now found yourself in, the strangest medieval laws that actually existed. The first chapter spoke of chivalry's hidden costs, 3 things nobody teaches you about this era. The text was written in a flowing script that seemed almost to dance across the page. It warned of the unseen burdens carried by knights and nobles alike, laws not often spoken about, but always observed with rigid discipline. As you read on, your heart quickened at each revelation. First, it spoke of chivalry's double-edged sword. While honor and valor were celebrated, they also bred a sense of duty that could be suffocating. Knights were expected to protect the weak and uphold justice, but their own lives became intertwined with the very issues they sought to resolve. The second point delved into the complexities of fealty. Loyalty was not simply a matter of heart or soul. It required adherence to intricate codes of behavior that often placed individuals in impossible situations. A knight might swear allegiance to multiple lords, each with their own demands and expectations, leading to moral dilemmas where one's duty conflicted with another. Finally, the chapter explored the hidden costs of social status. While nobility offered privileges and power, it also came with a heavy price. The constant pressure to maintain appearances through grand feasts, tournaments, and elaborate ceremonies could drain both resources and energy. Moreover, beneath this facade lay deep-seated resentments and alliances that were carefully nurtured, yet always fraught with tension. Each page turned seemed to peel back another layer of the medieval world, revealing its intricacies and contradictions. You found yourself engrossed in these tales of nobility, chivalry, and hidden burdens, each story painting a picture of a time both wondrous and troubled. As you reached for your lantern, ready to leave this sanctuary of ancient knowledge, something caught your eye, a small leather-bound diary tucked away near the bottom shelf. Its cover was worn, but still held an air of importance. The title read, "The Strangest Medieval Laws That Actually Existed," mirroring the book you had just finished. Curiosity piqued. You opened it to find a series of notes and sketches detailing various laws and customs from this era. Among them were records of peculiar regulations, such as those concerning the use of birds for communication during wars or the bizarre tradition of swallowing stones practiced by certain knights before battle, a method purportedly meant to ward off evil spirits. With newfound determination, you resolved to delve deeper into these mysteries and uncover more about this enigmatic world. As dawn began to break outside, casting long shadows across your path, you closed the diary with a quiet click, ready for whatever secrets lay hidden in the layers of history that surrounded you. The first light of dawn seeped through the narrow slits of your window, casting a warm golden hue across the room and mingling with the earthy scent of wet stones. You closed the diary with a quiet click, its leather cover yielding to the pressure of your fingers as you set it gently on the small table by the bed. The air was heavy with the faint aroma of breakfast brewing downstairs, something familiar yet distant, like warm bread and simmering broth mingling in a pot over an open flame. You rose from the soft mattress, its springs creaking softly under your weight, and stretched your limbs, feeling the stiffness in muscles that had been at rest through the night. The cool morning air nipped at your skin as you stepped onto the cold flagstones of your chamber floor. A sudden draft swept past, carrying with it the crisp scent of rain-soaked earth from outside. You pulled your tunic closer around yourself and shuffled towards the window to close it against the chill. The room was small but cozy, its walls lined with books in leather bindings that seemed to whisper secrets as you passed them by. Their spines were smooth under your touch, inviting yet distant, like old friends who have much to say when given a chance. Your fingers traced over the raised letters on their covers, books of history, law, and medicine from days gone by. You turned back towards the table where an inkwell sat waiting, its black liquid gleaming in the light that filtered through the window. The scent of pine resin mixed with ink filled your nostrils, a reminder of the many hours spent poring over these very pages. You picked up a quill and dipped it into the well, feeling the smooth shaft between your fingers as you prepared to continue where you left off. The table was cluttered with papers, notes from previous readings, sketches of odd laws that had caught your eye, and faded copies of ancient texts. You arranged them carefully in order, their edges curling slightly at the corners like old leaves. A thick leather book lay open before you, its pages yellowed, but still holding secrets within. You flipped through a few pages, each one revealing fragments of strange regulations and bizarre customs that had once governed life in medieval times. You read about laws so mundane they seemed almost absurd, how peasants were forbidden from wearing colored clothing or owning more than 3 hens, the elaborate rules for washing clothes to ensure proper cleanliness, the strict guidelines on what foods could be eaten by different classes, with nobles enjoying a sumptuous variety while commoners subsisted on meager fare. The text was written in precise hand, each word crafted meticulously as if it held immense weight and importance. You paused at one particularly peculiar passage. By order of King Henry II, all persons are required to wear fresh flowers on their clothing every morning for the sake of public health. It seemed such a simple request, but you could imagine the chaos it would cause. People bustling through marketplaces, trying to snatch wildflowers from gardens before dawn, or paying exorbitant prices for blooms at flower stands, perhaps even wearing crowns of fragrant blossoms as they marched into church services. You smiled wryly, feeling the weight of the quill in your hand and the ink starting to flow. You continued reading, each sentence adding another layer to this bizarre world. How lepers were forced to wear bell pendants so passers-by could be warned. Laws dictating when certain odors were allowed or prohibited, with citizens fined for being too pungent or not enough. As you read on, the morning grew brighter outside. Light streamed in through the windows, casting long shadows that danced across the floor and played tricks with your vision. The air became more alive, filled with a hum of activity as servants began their work, chairs scraping against flagstones, doors creaking open to admit sunlight. A knock on the door brought you back from your immersion in text. You set down the quill and stood, feeling the floor beneath your feet shift slightly under your weight. "Come," you called out softly, moving towards the door as it opened to reveal a servant girl with a tray bearing a cup of steaming tea. She placed the tray on the table and stepped aside, her eyes wide with curiosity at the stacks of papers before you. You picked up the mug, feeling its warmth seep into your hand through layers of cloth. The steam rose lazily around it, mingling with the scent of fresh brewed leaves that filled the air. "Good morning," she said quietly, lowering her eyes as if sensing some private moment between writer and text. You nodded in acknowledgement but didn't speak, instead sipping from your mug to let its warmth spread through you. The tea was strong and comforting, a small pleasure amidst the endless sea of words that surrounded you. "Is there anything else?" she asked after a moment's pause. "No," you replied, setting down the cup carefully. "Just leave this for now." She bowed slightly before turning to leave, her steps soft on the stone floor as she closed the door behind her with a quiet click. You returned your attention to the papers spread out in front of you, each one an invitation into another strange and forgotten world. You picked up a paper labeled "The Smell" and began to read once more, feeling the weight of each word as they danced across the page under your fingers. The air was thick with history now, filled not just with ink and parchment, but with the very essence of those long-ago times, times when everyday life could be dictated by such whimsical rules that today would seem utterly absurd. Yet in their own way, these laws were reflections of human nature, our desire for order, our need to define ourselves through tiny acts of control. Even as you read about bizarre regulations and strange customs, you couldn't help but smile, feeling a connection to those who had lived so differently yet still grappled with the same basic questions we do today. As dawn continued to break outside, casting long shadows across your path, you closed the diary with a quiet click. Ready for whatever secrets lay hidden in the layers of history that surrounded you. Dawn's first light had painted a golden hue across the pages of your diary, but as you stepped out into the cool morning air, it was the scent that greeted you, a pungent blend of earth and decaying leaves mingled with the faint aroma of hay from the nearby stables. The stone walls of medieval buildings loomed around you like ancient sentinels, their surfaces cold to your touch under the sun's first rays. As you walked through the bustling market square, the air thickened with various odors, spices and herbs for sale, the tangy smell of wet wool from nearby laundresses, and the unmistakable stench of manure that clung like a heavy shroud. You inhaled deeply, noting how these scents were often left out in history books, yet they defined daily life here more than any written account. Your thoughts drifted to the diary entries you had just pennied, those words capturing not only the stories of people long gone, but also their world's most mundane details. the smell of a freshly baked loaf of bread, the pungent aroma of sweaty horses, or even the sweet fragrance of violets that once adorned the hair of noblewomen. Each scent held its own significance and spoke volumes about social norms, daily routines, and cultural practices. As you turned your attention to the laws you had been researching, a particular piece stood out in stark contrast. No person shall defecate within 30 feet of any water source or living area. The law was simple but profound. It reflected an era where sanitation meant little more than avoiding immediate harm and ensuring that disease-carrying waste did not contaminate the community's only source of fresh water. You pondered on how this seemingly arbitrary rule might have influenced daily routines, leading to the establishment of communal latrines, large pits often covered with wooden floors or simple bridges. These were common in larger towns, but also found in smaller villages, serving as a point where everyone gathered and interacted, thus providing another layer to social life beyond mere commerce. Your mind wandered back to the diary again, this time flipping through entries that detailed the construction of these latrines and their maintenance by appointed individuals. The laws surrounding them were strict. Failure to maintain or clean could result in fines, much like those for spitting on public thoroughfares or defiling church grounds with unsanitary practices. The scent of hay suddenly intensified as you approached a stable where horses were being readied for the day's work. Horses played an integral part not just in transportation, but also in agriculture and industry, making their care essential. Yet it was clear that hygiene standards applied to these animals were far from stringent. The stench they produced often permeated every nook of medieval life. You remembered a passage about how horses were sometimes ridden directly into town without proper cleaning, perhaps not so different from modern practices where people might forget to change their clothes after outdoor activities. The diary noted that such neglect was frowned upon, though enforcement varied widely depending on social status and local customs. Leaving the stable behind, you continued your walk along a winding path lined with houses and shops. Here another law caught your eye. Any person found wearing shoes soiled by excrement shall be fined 2 shillings. This rule, while perhaps seen as draconian today, highlights the social hierarchy of medieval times where cleanliness was not only about personal hygiene, but also status. These laws, scattered throughout time and space, painted a picture far richer than any historical account could capture. They spoke to the daily struggles, routines, and societal norms that shaped lives in ways both subtle and overt. As you turned a corner, the sound of water trickling into a nearby stream drew your attention. It was here where another law came alive. All refuse from latrines must be carried at least 30 feet away before being discarded into rivers or ditches. Standing by this natural feature, you pondered on how such laws influenced not only public health, but also the environment and social interactions. The stream, once a source of drinking water for all, now bore witness to centuries-old regulations designed to prevent contamination, yet reflected broader issues around sustainability and communal responsibility. Your reflection was interrupted as a young boy approached, carrying a bucket filled with what appeared to be waste from nearby latrines. He looked up at you with curiosity before continuing his task, seemingly unaware of the historical significance of his actions in this medieval marketplace. As dawn fully broke over the town, casting long shadows across your path once more, you realized that every scent and lore held a story waiting to be told. Stories about resilience, adaptation, and the human struggle for order amidst chaos. With renewed resolve, you closed the diary one last time before heading back into the heart of medieval life, ready to uncover even more tales hidden within its layers. The sound of hammering filled your ears, a rhythmic thud that seemed to pulse with each beat, as if the very earth itself was singing in harmony with the blacksmiths at their forges. The smell of heated iron mixed with the pungent scent of sweat and leather, a heady blend that clung to every breath you drew. You held the thick wooden diary tightly in your hands, its pages slightly cool from the earlier warmth of the sun, now slowly cooling as night fell. The weight pressed down on your fingers, thick and heavy with history, almost tangible. Each page whispered secrets to those who dared read between the lines, but tonight you felt a special connection, as if this diary was telling its story directly through your fingertips. You stood in the courtyard of the local blacksmith's forge, where the air buzzed with activity and energy. The forge itself was an imposing structure, built from dark stones that had seen centuries of use. The floor was covered in ashes and scraps of metal, a mosaic of discarded dreams and failures. A large fire roared inside, casting long shadows across the walls. The heat from this furnace was almost palpable, seeping through your clothes like invisible hands, warming you despite the chill outside. You could see the blacksmiths at work. Their faces were smudged with soot and sweat, their eyes lit by the glow of the forge as they shaped iron into useful tools. The clink of metal on stone echoed in the courtyard, mingling with the heavy hammering from inside the forge. You watched one man, his muscles bulging beneath his leather apron as he swung a massive hammer with practiced ease, sending sparks flying like tiny stars. As you stood there, absorbing this scene, you felt an unexpected sense of camaraderie with these men. Their lives were hard and filled with toil, but in their hands lay the very tools that made life easier for everyone else. You imagined what it must be like to spend so many hours bent over a hot forge, your back burning from the heat and sweat pouring down your face. Suddenly, you noticed something different. A faint murmur of voices began to rise above the constant din. The blacksmiths were talking amongst themselves, their heads lowered as they whispered urgently. You couldn't make out what was being said, but there was an undercurrent of tension in their words that sent a chill down your spine. Curiosity piqued, you decided to investigate further. With careful steps, you approached the group of blacksmiths, trying not to draw too much attention. Their faces were tense as they huddled together, exchanging looks and gestures with one another. One of them glanced up at you, his eyes narrowing in suspicion before he quickly turned back to his companions. "Do you hear that?" someone asked quietly, pointing towards the forge where the hammering had stopped abruptly. Another man nodded grimly. "It's been a long day, but something is off." You couldn't help but agree. The air was thick with an unspoken fear or anger, and it felt as though this group of men shared some secret that you were not privy to yet. One by one, the blacksmiths began to leave their stations, casting wary glances around them before slipping away into the shadows. Their movements seemed almost furtive, like a band of conspirators in an old play. You watched as they disappeared, feeling a mix of fascination and unease wash over you. What was it that had caused such a sudden change in these men's behavior? As night deepened around you, the courtyard began to quiet down further. The last few blacksmiths left their workstations with heavy sighs, carrying tools and supplies back towards the forge, where they disappeared inside. You hesitated at the doorway for just a moment longer before deciding to follow them in. The interior of the forge was even hotter than outside, heat radiating from the massive furnace that dominated one wall. Shadows danced on the rough stone walls as you stepped inside, your boots crunching softly over the ash and metal debris scattered across the floor. The air was heavy with smoke and the acrid scent of burning metal. You approached a small table by the side where two blacksmiths were seated, their faces illuminated only by the flickering light from oil lamps placed on either end of it. They glanced up as you entered, their expressions wary but not hostile, more like that of strangers who had seen too much of each other in difficult times. "Evening," one greeted gruffly, his voice carrying a hint of exhaustion. The other nodded briefly without looking at you, instead focusing on the task before him, a piece of iron being heated and shaped with practiced skill. You sat down beside them, feeling the solid wood beneath your weight as it creaked slightly under your touch. "Strange day today," one remarked dryly, his eyes never leaving his work. The other man grunted in agreement. "Yeah, something's going on here." You didn't say anything, instead choosing to listen. The hum of activity resumed around you, hammers striking metal with a rhythmic sound that seemed almost mechanical now, the steady crackling of wood from the furnace as it burned through another log. As night advanced, the atmosphere in the forge grew increasingly tense. Small talk was scarce, most conversations were brief and to the point. The blacksmiths worked diligently, but without much enthusiasm, their movements slow and deliberate. It was like watching a group of people who had lost all joy in labor, just going through the motions. You noticed that each time one finished his piece, he would lay it down on the table with an almost reluctant sigh before moving to get another piece from the furnace. The tools they used were simple but well-made. Their work was precise and efficient despite the lack of enthusiasm shown by those who wielded them. After what seemed like hours, but could have been minutes, you heard a soft knock at the forge's door, a hesitant, almost fearful sound that echoed through the small space. One blacksmith looked up from his task to see who it might be, while the other continued hammering away as if nothing out of the ordinary was happening. The door opened slowly, revealing two figures standing just inside, both men in tattered cloaks and faces grim with worry. They stepped fully into the forge, closing the door behind them. The newcomers were older than those already present. Their bodies bore the marks of years spent bent over forges, their hands rough from constant handling. "Brothers," one of these new arrivals said, his voice barely audible above the sound of hammering and metalwork, "we need to talk." The blacksmiths looked at each other, eyes narrowing as if they were unsure what to expect. You could see them silently communicating with each other, exchanging glances that seemed to convey complex emotions in just a moment. "What is it?" one finally asked warily. One of the newcomers stepped forward, his cloak rustling softly against the floor. "We have reason to believe there's been an injustice," he began, voice low and urgent. "Something needs to be done about this situation." The air thickened further. You could almost taste the tension in it now. The blacksmiths exchanged glances again, their faces showing a mix of shock, concern, and determination. "You mean," one started hesitantly before trailing off, clearly unsure how much he should reveal. "Yes," another interjected firmly, "we need to act." The forge seemed to grow even hotter as the brothers continued discussing in hushed tones. You could see their hands moving nervously on tools or tables. Beads of sweat began forming and trickling down their faces despite the intense heat. It was clear that this discussion was not just about work. They were talking about something much more important. After what felt like an eternity, one blacksmith spoke up again. "We can't keep letting them get away with it." The others nodded in agreement, their voices growing louder and firmer as they shared ideas and plans. You watched silently, feeling a strange mixture of awe and fear at the gravity of this moment. You knew that these men were making history, perhaps even changing everything forever. The weight of the diary felt heavier now, as if it contained not just stories, but real power waiting to be unleashed. The weight of the diary felt heavier now, as if it contained not just stories, but real power waiting to be unleashed. You lie on your bed, a soft blanket draped over you like an old friend. The warmth from the nearby fireplace seeps into your skin through the layers of clothing and blankets, making you feel cozy and secure. The room is quiet, except for the gentle crackling of wood burning in the hearth, its scent mingling with that of freshly brewed herbal tea. You can almost taste the faint bitterness on your tongue, as if someone had just poured a cup for you. The air feels heavy with exhaustion after another long day at work. Your eyes are gritty, and your body yearns for rest. You run your fingers over the smooth leather cover of the diary, noting how it has become slightly worn from years of handling. You imagine what stories lay hidden within its pages, waiting to be shared. The weight in your hands is comforting. It's as if you can feel the history it carries, each word and line a testament to times long past. As you shift position on your bed, the quilt rustles softly against the wooden floorboards beneath. You hear a distant clock ticking somewhere in the house, its rhythmic beat marking time with steady precision. It's a sound that lulls you into a sense of safety, like an old friend keeping watch over you during these late hours. The only light comes from the flickering flame of your bedside lamp, casting long shadows across the room and making it seem as though everything is alive in this dim glow. You can see the shadow of your hand move when you turn the pages of the diary, each one a new invitation to step into another world. You close your eyes for just a moment, letting yourself be transporting back through time with each page turn. The weight of the book doesn't change. It remains steady and constant in your hands, like an anchor pulling you down. You feel its pages as though they are made not of paper, but of memories, tangible and real. As you reach for another sip from your tea, the warmth spreads through your fingers, a gentle reminder that even after all these years, there is still something to look forward to, something comforting in the knowledge that history is always waiting just outside our doors. The smell of the room shifts slightly as the heat rises and then settles again into its familiar pattern. You open the diary once more, letting your fingers trace over the words on the first page. They seem almost alive under your touch, each line a whisper from another era. You can feel the texture of the pages, rough in some places where they've been handled many times before. The smell of ink and paper is strong now, mingling with that of the old leather binding. The room around you has grown stiller as night deepens outside. The ticking clock slows down to a barely audible hum, almost imperceptible against the quiet of your thoughts. You can hear yourself breathing softly, steady and rhythmic, like the pulse of life itself. The blanket seems heavier now, wrapping snugly around you in its familiar embrace. You turn another page, this one filled with lines written by someone else long ago, lines that speak to a world vastly different from our own, yet feel eerily similar in their struggles and desires. You can almost see the person who wrote these words sitting at a desk, illuminated only by candlelight, penning them as if they were secrets whispered into the night. The weight of the diary feels both comforting and slightly overwhelming now, like holding something so ancient that its very existence is a testament to resilience across generations. The pages are like old friends, each one a reminder of those who came before us and their stories waiting patiently to be told. You take another sip from your tea, feeling it warm your hands as you hold the diary close. The crackling fire grows louder in this quiet moment, its heat adding layers to the warmth that already surrounds you. You can almost feel the history within these pages, a tangible presence that has endured for centuries and will continue to do so. The room feels like a cocoon now, safe and warm around you as night fully descends outside. The ticking of the clock slows down completely, blending with your own heartbeat in a harmonious rhythm. You can feel yourself sinking deeper into this quiet world, the weight of history settling gently onto your shoulders. You turn to another page, letting your fingers move across the lines with practiced ease, each one a step further back into time, into stories that speak directly to you from centuries past. The air is thick and still, as if holding in place all the secrets contained within these pages. The blanket wraps around you tighter now, pulling you closer and more securely against its warmth. You can almost feel your own breath misting on your cheeks, a small detail but one that grounds you firmly in this moment of rest. The diary is like an old companion, familiar and safe as it rests gently in your hands. You continue to read, each word bringing you further into the world of long ago times, where laws were strange yet somehow relatable, where daily life was filled with small frustrations and joys alike. The pages turn one by one, carrying you forward through time without ever leaving this cozy sanctuary of warmth and quiet. The room feels like a protective shell now, shielding you from all but the softest sounds outside, the distant call of crickets, or perhaps even an owl in the distance. You can feel yourself drifting deeper into these stories, letting them wash over you with their strange, yet familiar rhythms. As you reach for another sip from your tea, the warmth it brings is a balm to tired muscles and weary minds. The blanket seems almost alive now, its texture soft against your skin as you wrap it more tightly around yourself. You can feel each breath moving through your body, slow and steady like the fire in the hearth. The diary feels both heavy and comforting, holding within it not just stories, but pieces of history, fragments of lives lived long ago that still resonate today. Each line a whisper from another time, each page turning slowly to reveal new wonders and mysteries waiting to be discovered. You continue reading until your eyes grow heavy with sleep's embrace, the weight of the diary finally lifting as you set it gently aside on the bedside table. The blanket slides off your shoulders and falls away into darkness, leaving only the gentle warmth of the fireplace and the stillness of night surrounding you. As you drift into dreams, the fire crackles softly in the background, a constant reminder that even as sleep takes hold, there is comfort to be found in these quiet moments. You feel safe here, secure under the blanket's embrace, ready for whatever rest may bring. The diary lies open on the table beside your bed, a silent sentinel guarding the secrets of history until tomorrow. The weight of it all, of time and stories and long-ago struggles, is finally released as you close your eyes and let yourself be carried away by the soft hum of the fireplace and the gentle sounds of night. You are here now, in this quiet room filled with warmth and stillness, ready to rest and dream until morning comes once more. The weight of the diary felt heavier now, as if it contained not just stories, but real power waiting to be unleashed. You lay on your cot, the cool leather under your fingers, a stark contrast to the warmth of the fire crackling in the corner of the room. The smell of wood smoke and dry hay filled the air, mingled with the faintest hint of old parchment, a comforting scent that always brought back memories. The night was quiet, save for the occasional hoot from an owl outside. You stretched your arms out to either side, feeling each muscle relax as you settled deeper into sleep. The firelight danced across the walls in flickering shadows, casting a golden glow over everything it touched. It felt like the perfect moment, as if time had slowed and all was still. You picked up the diary again, turning its pages gently with your fingertips. Each entry seemed to pulse with life, drawing you into their stories. You could almost hear the voices of long-dead people speaking through these words, sharing secrets and scandals that had been kept hidden for centuries. As you read on, a sudden thought struck you. What if this diary held more than just tales? What if it contained real magic, whispers from another time? The very idea was both thrilling and terrifying. You closed the book with care, setting it aside as your eyelids grew heavy. The world outside seemed to fade into insignificance. A gentle breeze wafted in through an open window, carrying a coolness that spoke of approaching night. You shivered slightly, pulling the thin blanket tighter around you for warmth. The fire crackled louder now, its heat spreading comforting waves over your body. Your thoughts drifted back to the diary's contents, each entry revealing more about this strange era. You remembered reading one particularly odd law. On Midsummer's Eve, all women must wear a bonnet adorned with 13 holly leaves and 3 sprigs of rosemary. The sheer absurdity of it was both amusing and slightly unsettling. What if you were there? Would you follow such a silly rule or laugh at its ridiculousness? You closed your eyes, imagining yourself in that medieval world. Your heart felt like a heavy stone in your chest as the diary's pages opened again, their inked words beckoning to be read once more. You picked up where you left off, feeling each word sink into your mind. No man may dance with his wife on St. Valentine's Day unless she grants him permission first. You chuckled softly at this one. How many times had people been caught in such a predicament? The diary spoke of love and conflict, joy and sorrow, all so different from the world you knew. The weight of the diary felt almost tangible now, as if it was more than just an object, but a portal to another time. You imagined yourself stepping through its pages, each turn revealing new stories, new faces, and new challenges. The thought made your heart race, with excitement mixed with trepidation. As you read on, a soft knock echoed from the doorway. Startled, you sat up straighter, the diary slipping between your fingers as if it sensed the disturbance. "Who's there?" you called out softly, trying to keep calm despite the sudden intrusion of reality into this dreamlike state. The sound of shuffling feet approached, and a small candle was held aloft by a figure in dark robes. "Master Thomas," he said quietly, his voice carrying a note of urgency. "There's something we must discuss." You nodded, placing the diary back on your chest as you stood up to greet him. The warmth from the fire still clung to the air, but now there was an undercurrent of tension that made your skin prickle with awareness. "Come in," you said, gesturing for Thomas to enter. He stepped inside, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for something hidden in plain sight. "What is it?" you asked again, folding your arms over your chest as he approached. The weight of the diary was gone now, replaced by a sense of anticipation and unease. Thomas hesitated before speaking, his voice low but urgent. "There's talk among the scholars about new laws being drafted," he said. "They speak of strange ordinances that could affect everyone." You leaned forward slightly, intrigued despite your growing fatigue. "What kind of laws?" you asked, trying to keep your tone neutral. "Three in particular have been mentioned. They involve Midsummer's Eve, St. Valentine's Day, and the Feast of St. John," Thomas replied, his gaze fixed on yours as if gauging your reaction. You blinked slowly, processing this information. "And what are these laws about?" you pressed, feeling a spark of curiosity ignite within you. "Firstly," he began, taking a deep breath before continuing, "on Midsummer's Eve, all women must wear bonnets with exactly 13 holly leaves and 3 sprigs of rosemary." Your mind immediately went to the diary's entry. "And if they don't?" you asked, feeling both amusement and concern. Thomas shook his head slightly. "No one knows for sure," he admitted. "Some say it brings bad luck, others believe it is simply a test of obedience. It's quite unusual." You frowned, running your fingers through your hair in thought. "Secondly, on St. Valentine's Day, no man may dance with his wife unless she grants him permission first." Thomas paused, as if waiting for you to react. "Really?" you echoed, feeling the weight of this rule settle into your chest. "And what happens if he doesn't ask?" Thomas shrugged slightly. "Again, there are many theories," he said. "Some say it leads to misunderstandings and arguments. Others believe it strengthens marital bonds." You nodded slowly, trying to imagine such a scenario playing out in real life. "And the third law," you prompted. "During the Feast of St. John, all unmarried men must participate in a ritual dance," Thomas explained. "If they fail to perform their part, they are said to forfeit their right to marry." Your breath caught in your throat at this revelation. Unmarried men being forced into some kind of strange rite. It seemed almost barbaric. "What if someone refuses?" you asked, feeling a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Refusal is not taken lightly," Thomas said gravely. It's believed to bring shame upon the family, and in rare cases, even exile. You swallowed hard, thinking about how such laws might impact people's lives. The diary felt like an anchor now, grounding you as you absorbed this new information. What do we make of all this? You asked Thomas, feeling a sense of urgency building within you. Only time will tell, he replied softly. But I think it's important that we understand these laws fully before they take effect. You nodded slowly, the weight of your pillow seeming to shift, as if urging you back down into sleep. The fire continued to burn steadily in front of you, casting long shadows across the room. What do you suggest? You asked, feeling a small spark of determination ignite within you despite the exhaustion. Perhaps we should discuss these laws with others, Thomas suggested. Others who might have insight or experience dealing with such matters. You considered this for a moment before nodding again. All right. Let's do that. The weight of your pillow felt comforting now, urging you to rest fully. Thomas stepped closer, as if about to say more but stopped himself, offering a small smile. Sleep well, he said softly. Thank you, you replied, feeling the warmth of the fire wash over you once more. As Thomas turned to leave, you watched him go until his figure faded into the darkness outside your door. You lay back down on your cot, feeling the blanket pull tightly around you as if wrapping you in a cocoon of comfort. The diary lay open before you, its pages waiting to be read, but also containing secrets too heavy for words alone. The firelight continued to dance across the walls, casting long shadows that seemed almost alive. You closed your eyes, letting yourself sink into this quiet world where time moved slowly and everything felt right. In these moments of stillness, the diary's weight was no longer a burden, but a companion on this strange journey through history. As you drifted off to sleep, the sounds of the night continued around you, owl hoots, distant laughter from nearby villagers, the soft crackling of wood in the fire. Each sound became part of your peaceful slumber, weaving together into a tapestry of comfort and dreams. The diary lay open before you once more, as if beckoning to be read, but also resting, waiting for its turn to speak again when the time was right. You felt safe now, cocooned in this moment where nothing could disturb the quietude of your slumber. You felt a gentle warmth seep into your hands, like the softest fabric pressing against them, a cozy wool blanket that smelled faintly of herbs and old books. The smell made you think of home and safety, but it was also tinged with something more, something that hinted at secrets hidden in the very air around you. The weight of a heavy wooden door closing gently outside your chamber signaled the end of another day. You had been cooped up inside for days now, ever since the plague began its deadly dance among the villagers. The silence was almost too profound, breaking only with soft whispers from the few who dared to venture out into the night. The air here smelled different, sour and sickly sweet, a mingling of sweat, fear, and something else you couldn't quite place. It clung to your skin like a second layer, making you feel both suffocated and exposed at once. The fire in the hearth crackled softly, casting flickering shadows on the walls as if they were alive, moving ever so slightly with each burst of flame. You had heard tales of how people huddled together for warmth and support during times like these, but it was strange to feel such a lack of human contact. The fire was your only companion now, its feeble light barely piercing the encroaching darkness that seemed to stretch endlessly into the night. As you leaned back against the wooden chair where you had spent countless hours scribbling notes and drawing diagrams, the leather creaked softly under your weight. You sighed heavily, feeling a mix of exhaustion and resignation. The day's exertions were finally catching up with you. Your limbs felt heavy as lead, and your head throbbed from reading too long without proper rest. The blanket shifted slightly against your skin, its edges brushing gently at the back of your neck. It was soft, but not too thick, just enough to keep you warm without making you feel overheated in this oppressive heat. The fabric reminded you of summer days spent outside, running barefoot on grass that tickled and cooled your feet. You rubbed your eyes wearily, wishing for a momentary break from the endless cycle of writing, thinking, and then more writing again. Your mind felt jumbled, like leaves caught in an autumn wind, flitting here and there with no clear direction or purpose. It was as if every page you turned over held just another piece to this puzzle that seemed never-ending. The firelight danced across your parchment, casting intricate patterns on the wall behind it. Each line of text appeared almost alive under its illumination, as if they were reaching out to touch you with their delicate curves and flourishes. You traced one such curve with a finger, feeling the rough texture of the quill that had created this very word. Outside, the world remained silent, a vast expanse of darkness, broken only by occasional hoots from owls or creaking branches in the wind. The air was thick with the scent of rain-dampened earth and decaying leaves, mingled now with the faint stench of sickness that clung to everything. You heard a soft knock at your door, a gentle reminder that even here there were still duties that must be attended to, tasks that needed completing before you could truly rest. You sighed again, pushing yourself up from the chair and stretching your arms above your head in preparation for what lay ahead. The weight of the blanket felt reassuring as you wrapped it around yourself, pulling its warmth close. The fabric clung to your body, slightly damp despite having been aired out earlier today. It was an odd sensation, comforting yet almost suffocating at once. You made your way carefully across the room toward the door, each step echoing softly on the wooden floorboards beneath you. The hinges creaked as you turned the handle, releasing a stream of cold air that seemed to slice through the warmth inside like a knife slicing butter. Outside, night had fully claimed its dominion. As you stepped out into the cool night air, you felt a brief surge of relief, breathing in the crisp scent of dewy grass and damp earth after days of stale indoor air. The stars above twinkled brightly against the dark sky, their light barely visible through the thick veil of clouds that had gathered earlier today. You paused for a moment, letting your eyes adjust to the sudden change from warm interior lighting to starlight. A soft breeze whispered past you, carrying with it the distant sounds of neighbors closing doors or tending fires. The noise was comforting in its familiarity, almost like old friends calling out to each other across an invisible barrier. You began walking slowly down the dimly lit corridor, your feet barely making a sound on the worn wooden planks beneath them. Each step brought you closer to the main hall, where others would soon gather for what little sustenance they could find before retiring once more into their rooms for another night of uncertainty and fear. As you reached the door leading outside, it creaked open slightly in response to your touch, a silent invitation that spoke volumes without words. You pushed gently against its edge, feeling a chill rush through the opening as you stepped out onto the stone path surrounding the courtyard. The cool air felt invigorating against your skin, refreshing after days of confinement indoors. Stars twinkled above like tiny diamonds scattered across velvet blackness, their light casting long shadows that danced and twisted at odd angles on the ground below. The silence was almost palpable, heavy with unspoken worries and hidden truths. You walked slowly along the path, hands tucked into your sleeves to ward off a slight chill. Each breath you took seemed deeper than usual, drawing in the night air as if it might somehow fill some empty space within you. Your feet made soft thuds against the stones beneath them, each one echoing slightly with every step. Reaching the edge of the courtyard, you stood still for a moment, letting your eyes adjust to the near-total darkness around you. A faint glow came from the nearby stables where horses and mules were being tended by their keepers, bright spots in an otherwise dark sea that seemed endless under the starlit sky. A low murmur of voices floated over from somewhere inside the main hall, the sound of people gathered together, speaking softly as they passed around food or shared stories to pass time. It was a familiar noise, one you had grown accustomed to during these trying days, yet even now it felt strange and out of place, like listening to an old friend tell tales in someone else's home. You took another deep breath, feeling the weight of your worries lifting slightly with each exhale. The cool night air seemed to cleanse both body and mind, a soothing balm for weary souls. You began walking slowly back towards the main entrance, hands still tucked into sleeves as you made your way through the shadows that stretched out around you. As you neared the door leading inside, it opened slightly of its own accord, revealing a faint light spilling from within. The hall was nearly empty now, save for a few figures huddled together near the fire. They looked up at your approach, their faces illuminated by flickering flames that danced and played on them like tiny fairies. You stepped inside, feeling the warmth of the hearth envelop you as if it were an old friend greeting its return after too long away. The air was thick with the scent of roasting meat and baked bread, comforting aromas that seemed almost magical in their ability to soothe troubled hearts. A small fire crackled softly nearby, casting gentle light on those gathered around it. You took a seat beside one of them, a thin woman whose name you couldn't recall, but whom you knew well enough by now. She smiled weakly at you as she passed around pieces of roasted meat and slices of dark bread, offering them without words. You accepted gratefully, feeling the rough texture of her hands against yours, warm and comforting in their familiarity. As everyone ate in silence, the only sounds were those of chewing or occasional murmurs between neighbors. The air was thick with tension, a heavy weight that seemed to press down on all present. Yet there was also a sense of shared purpose here, that each person gathered around this fire knew they needed one another more than ever before. You picked at your food absently, feeling the small bones and fibers in the meat between your teeth as you chewed slowly. The bread tasted stale, but somehow still satisfying, its rough texture offering something tangible to focus on amidst all the worry and fear that threatened to consume everything else. Across from you sat a man whose name was lost to time, a scholar much like yourself who had dedicated his life to studying ancient manuscripts and laws long forgotten by most. He watched you closely, eyes gleaming with an almost mischievous light as he sipped at his wine. "What if," he began softly, leaning forward slightly so only the two of you could hear him, "what if our greatest secret outlived everyone who ever knew it?" You looked up sharply, startled by this sudden intrusion into your thoughts. The scholar smiled wryly, raising an eyebrow in challenge as he waited for a response. "What do you mean?" you asked cautiously, trying to keep the uncertainty from coloring your voice too much. He leaned back again, crossing his arms over his chest and resting them on top of each other, gesturing expansively with one hand. "Imagine this," he said slowly, almost contemplatively. "Imagine a law so strange, so unusual that even those who wrote it couldn't quite believe its very existence." You nodded slowly, trying to follow the train of thought. The scholar continued, his voice soft but steady. "Laws about love and betrayal during times like these, when sickness and death surround us at every turn. Laws that say if a man falls ill with plague, he must choose between dying alone or being visited by someone who can hold him while he breathes his last." Your mind began to drift as you tried to grasp the implications of such a law. "But why," you asked hesitantly, "why would anyone write something like that?" The scholar shrugged slightly, still watching you intently. "Perhaps they believed it was better for both parties, better than leaving someone alone in their final moments when fear and loneliness are all-consuming." You frowned deeply, the weight of his words settling heavily upon your thoughts. "And what happens if he chooses to be visited?" you pressed further. The scholar's smile widened slightly as he considered this question carefully. "Well," he began slowly, "that depends on whether or not that person agrees to visit him in turn." You felt a sudden chill run through you, realization dawning like the first light of dawn after a long night. The scholar noticed your growing discomfort and leaned closer still. "Imagine if everyone who knew about this law kept it secret until they themselves became ill," he continued softly, "until their own time came to an end." You shivered involuntarily, feeling the weight of his words settling over you like heavy snow on barren trees. The scholar's eyes sparkled with a rare kind of amusement as he studied your reaction. "You see," he said finally, "the secret that outlived everyone who knew it, because they kept their knowledge close to their hearts until death claimed them all." You sat there in silence for a long moment, absorbing the strange and unsettling implications of such a law. The air around you seemed suddenly colder, a stark reminder of how easily life could be taken away at any given moment. The scholar watched you closely, his expression thoughtful as he sipped more wine from his cup. "What do you think?" he asked softly after a while. "What if this wasn't just some forgotten relic from the past, but something real and true?" You hesitated before answering, weighing carefully every word lest they betray your growing unease. "It's impossible to say for certain," you replied slowly, "but it makes one wonder about human nature, how far we might go in times of desperation." The scholar nodded thoughtfully, his eyes gleaming with a mix of curiosity and concern as he considered this new possibility. "Aye," he agreed softly, "a strange secret indeed, one that haunts the shadows long after those who knew it are gone." The gentle creak of old wooden floorboards underfoot was your first sensation, a soft whisper that seemed to follow you like a shadow as you padded silently across the room. The air was thick, with the scent of warm bread and drying herbs from the kitchen, mingling with the faint hint of smoke curling up through the cracks in the roof. Your feet felt heavy and slow, each step carefully placed to avoid disturbing the stillness that enveloped everything. You reached out a hand towards an ancient wooden chair by the fire, its worn surface cool beneath your fingertips. You let it settle gently into place, feeling the familiar weight of it as you lowered yourself down with a soft sigh. The warmth from the roaring hearth was comforting, seeping through the woolen cloth of your tunic and making your muscles relax further. The light in the room was dim but warm, cast by flickering flames that danced across faces carved into the walls, faces of ancestors long gone, watching over you with an almost tangible presence. Shadows played along the wooden beams above, their patterns shifting as if alive themselves. The silence here was profound, yet not oppressive. It held a gentle lullaby quality. The room smelled distinctly of smoke and old wood, mingling with the faint aroma of roasting meats from the feast that had just concluded. A small plate rested on your lap, cold roasted chicken, its skin crispy enough to crinkle softly when you touched it. The warmth of the food was a welcome reminder of sustenance amidst this quiet introspection. Your fingers traced patterns along the chair's backrest as you settled in for what promised to be an evening of deep thought and perhaps even sleep. Outside, the night had closed in completely, darkness pressed against your windows like a thick blanket, muffling any sounds that might disturb the peace inside. Inside, however, there was nothing but stillness, no bustling kitchen or raucous laughter from the common hall. You leaned back slightly, closing your eyes and letting out another soft exhale. The weight of the day seemed to slip away with it, leaving behind a sense of profound calm. Your mind began its descent into sleep's embrace as you remembered once again why this place held such fascination for you, not just because of the strange tales that whispered through these walls at night, but simply because they were real, a part of history, no less bizarre than any fiction. And so, in this quiet room, under the watchful eyes of generations past, your thoughts drifted towards a particularly curious story about how Fowl had become an unlikely weapon during one of medieval Europe's most significant conflicts. In the quiet room, you could almost hear the whispers of the past echo through time as your mind wandered to this curious tale. The legend began in a land far away, a place where knights and castles towered over small villages that clung to survival with every breath. This was the 100 Years' War, one of history's longest and most tumultuous conflicts between England and France. In 1356, at the Battle of Poitiers, King Edward III of England faced off against Jean II of France. The battle took place on September 19th in a field known as Nau-le-Grand, now called La Roche-sur-Yon. It was here that history would take an unexpected turn, thanks to the unlikely weaponization of Fowl. The story goes that during the fierce engagement, Edward III's forces found themselves outmaneuvered and outnumbered. The French knights, armed with lances and swords, seemed invincible against the English archers who relied on their longbows for ranged combat. However, as the battle raged on, a peculiar sight caught the eye of an observer, a flock of geese that had taken flight. In medieval warfare, birds often played a crucial role in signaling or even creating distractions. The Fowl's presence at Poitiers was no accident. They were part of a strategic plan hatched by Edward III himself. According to chroniclers like Jean Froissart and the author of the Anglo-Norman Chronicle, King Edward had ordered his archers to carry live geese under their armor during the battle. As the English forces retreated, the geese, sensing danger or perhaps even trained for this purpose, began to scatter in panic. The noise and commotion created by these fleeing birds caught the attention of the French knights, who were already engaged with the English army. In a momentary distraction, they turned their eyes skyward and towards the retreating fowl. This sudden shift in focus proved disastrous for the French. As the geese flew away, the archers took this opportunity to unleash a barrage of arrows upon the now disoriented knights. The unexpected attack caught many by surprise, leading to chaos within the ranks as men struggled to regain their composure and aim at targets that had vanished from sight. The battle continued with renewed vigor on both sides, but it was clear that something extraordinary had occurred. Accounts describe how King Jean II of France himself was captured in this momentary lapse in concentration, along with many other high-ranking French nobles. It is said that the English king himself, witnessing the unexpected success, encouraged his archers to continue using live geese as a weapon. This story has been debated among historians and scholars for centuries. Some argue it's merely an embellishment or legend meant to glorify Edward III's victories. Others see it as evidence of early psychological warfare, where unexpected elements could disrupt enemy morale and combat efficiency. Regardless, the tale stands as one of the stranger chapters in medieval military strategy. After Poitiers, stories about Fowl playing crucial roles in battle continued to circulate through European courts and towns. In some regions, laws were even passed regulating the treatment of geese during wartime. For instance, a 14th-century ordinance from Flanders mandated that all birds used for such strategic purposes must be well fed and cared for by skilled handlers. The legacy of this unusual tactic spread beyond military circles into folklore and literature. Poets and chroniclers would reference the battle's peculiar circumstances in their works, often highlighting it as a testament to Edward III's ingenuity or simply marveling at how nature could be harnessed against one's enemies. As you pondered these tales, the quiet room seemed almost alive with echoes of bygone eras. The walls whispered stories of bravery and cunning, reminding us that even in history's most tumultuous times, there is always something to learn about ingenuity and the unexpected paths our destinies can take. In the quiet hush that settled over the room, you couldn't help but feel a strange connection to those who had lived centuries ago. The tales seemed less like ancient history and more like whispered secrets from another world. As if summoned by your thoughts, the air around you thickened slightly, as though it held the very essence of medieval times. You turned towards the small display case on one wall, holding a single feather in your hand. It was not just any feather. This one belonged to the legendary fowl of the region, birds so fierce and cunning that they had once been considered a strategic weapon by those who controlled them. The tales said it all began during a time when two neighboring kingdoms were locked in an unending feud, each side vying for dominance over the other. The story went like this. A young nobleman from one kingdom had stumbled upon these peculiar birds while on a hunting expedition far to the north. Entranced by their ferocity and agility, he saw potential where others only saw danger. He decided that if trained properly, they could be used as a military asset against his rivals. Back in his castle, with the help of skilled trainers who had once been employed by falconers for hunting, this nobleman began to develop a unique training program focused not just on speed and agility, but also on intelligence. These birds were taught to recognize enemy soldiers through distinctive markings or even specific voices, a revolutionary concept at the time. As weeks turned into months, word spread about these remarkable fowl. Soon enough, other nobles took notice of their potential and began seeking out ways to incorporate them into their own strategies. The local economy boomed as demand for these exotic birds skyrocketed. Merchants from distant lands journeyed across continents in search of these coveted warriors. However, with great power came significant risk. As more kingdoms sought control over the bird population, conflicts erupted not only between rival factions, but also within communities that had grown overly reliant on them. This led to a strange paradox. While these birds brought wealth and might to some, they also became sources of strife for others who struggled under the weight of their reliance. The law, in its wisdom or perhaps ignorance, had seen fit to regulate this burgeoning industry through a series of peculiar decrees. For instance, it was strictly forbidden to sell a bird directly from one nobleman's flock to another without going through an intermediary, a measure designed to prevent alliances, but which only served to create layers upon layers of complexity in transactions. More troubling were the laws that mandated certain colors or patterns on the bird's feathers as markers for their owners. These regulations, while intended to streamline identification during battle, often led to unintended consequences when rival factions began using these color codes as signals for coordinated attacks. As you held the feather between your fingers, contemplating this strange turn of events, it struck you how much like history's lessons were still playing out today, albeit in different forms. In one sense, these laws and their enforcement represented a failure to anticipate the complexities that arise when new technologies or resources enter society. Yet, on another level, they embodied humanity's ongoing struggle with power dynamics and control. You placed the feather back into its display case, contemplating how these stories of ingenuity and conflict were still relevant millennia later. The quiet room, filled with tales of bygone eras, seemed to whisper once more, "Learn from history's lessons, for even in today's most complex situations, there is always something to be gained through understanding the past." Tonight you've traveled through the mists of forgotten medieval laws and regulations, wandering among the shadows where once flourished a bedpan manufacturer's unlikely career, or perhaps a town crier who inadvertently became an espionage network. The distant fires of peasant hygiene practices flickered in your mind as if seen from afar, while the night held secrets that outlived even those who knew them, like walls with tales hidden within. In one day, legislation changed everything so drastically that it felt like a chasm had opened before you. These stories, though disparate, are all threads spun of human ingenuity and resilience. They intertwine to create a tapestry of life in the medieval world, a world where even the simplest things were fraught with complexity and consequence. If you'd like to keep exploring these whispered tales from history's margins, gently tap like and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey into this enchanting past. And if you feel awake enough, leave a comment and share where in the world you're listening from, whether it be an ancient land or a modern city. As you drift towards sleep, let these stories sink below the surface of thought. They are part of the Earth's long patience with human folly and wisdom alike. In your dreams, remember that every era has its strange laws and silent histories, waiting to be uncovered by curious minds.